that time on February 27th, 2021, which will expire. In accordance with executive order, it should be noted that we are operating in compliance with TC Section 4-5-312D by providing a real-time live audio-video access on Charter Channel 193 and TDS Channel 3, and is also available on Farragut YouTube channel. Live access to the virtual meeting is made available streaming on www.townoffarragut.org/live stream. It will be recorded and can be viewed later when posted on the Farragut YouTube channel. During this period of time, all Farragut citizens' agenda or forum comments and questions, along with a name and address, should be emailed to comments@townoffarragut.org and should have been received by 12 p.m. the day prior to the meeting in order to be included in the record of the night's meeting. All Farragut Board, Mayor, and Alderman meetings will be public notice per Tennessee state law. Our board meetings are also in compliance with TCA Section 8-44-103 with public notice of our posted agenda prior to each meeting. Pursuant to the governor's executive order, all votes taken tonight will be by roll call vote. Per the executive order, I ask that each member speaking to please identify themselves to permit the public to be certain that the identity of the person speaking. I'll now ask the town recorder to please take an attendance roll call for a quorum.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Present.
Alderman Povlin.
Alderman Povlin, present.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, present.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, here.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, present. And for the record, we ask that all media representatives please respond as well when requested. Do we have anyone for the press?
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is Michelle Hollenhead with the Farragut Press.
Okay, thank you. Shopper? Okay, any other? If so, please identify yourself. With none, then we'll ask for a approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any agenda amendments? Okay, none?
Yes, sir.
Okay, with the motion made and a second, I'll ask the town recorder to please take a roll call vote.
Alderman Povlin.
Alderman Povlin, yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show that the January 14th, 2021 agenda has been approved as stated. The approval of the minutes, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the December 10th, 2020 minutes as presented.
Allison, did you send those in a separate file? I think you did.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
All right, I didn't review them. Someone else is going to have to make the motion.
This is Alderman Pinchuk. I'll move for approval. I've read them.
Mayor Williams will second. I now ask for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Alderman Povlin.
I'm going to abstain just because I didn't get a chance to review them. I'm sorry.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Okay, let the record show that December 10th, 2020 minutes have been approved and will be recorded as official minutes of the meeting. Okay, next will be the mayor's report. And again, urge everyone to stay with the physical distancing and the face covering when around each other. I also urge everyone, please go to the new State of Tennessee website, the COVID-19 vaccine eligibility tool, and sign up to be notified when your turn comes up. That's https://COVID19.tn.gov. My wife and I recently signed up, and we are anxiously waiting our turn for the vaccine. As you know, the Board, Mayor, and Aldermen places a very high value on our great staff and our volunteer committee members. Sorry. And we're thankful for Governor Lee, who has again extended the executive order for our virtual meetings. At this point, I'll give the floor to the Vice Mayor for her report.
I have no report tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll move on to, does any other alderman have anything to report? If not, then we'll move on to resolution. We have one important resolution tonight in accordance with the Town of Farragut Municipal Code 12, Section 12-2. I'll ask our town recorder to please read Resolution R 2021-01.
Yes, sir. It says, whereas the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of the Town of Farragut wishes to appoint a municipal judge, and whereas the level of compensation of the municipal judge may be set by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, now therefore be it resolved that, and we'll fill in the blank, is hereby appointed effective February 1st, 2021 as municipal judge to a term ending January 31st, 2022, or thereafter until a successor municipal judge has been appointed and has been sworn in and shall be paid in compensation of $100 per session of the Farragut Municipal Court. This resolution is duly adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on this 14th day of January 2021. And Keith Alley, who is our current judge, who has been our judge since 2016, has also agreed to continue on in that position.
I'm going to
Okay,
move to approve. I'm sorry. I'm going to move to approve. This is Alderman Pavlin. Move to approve Resolution R 2021-01, appointment of Keith Alley as the Town of Farragut Municipal Judge.
Alderman Pinchuk, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. With a motion second, I guess we can ask the town reporter now for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Meyer,
Alderman Meyer, yes.
Alderman Pinchuk,
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Alderman Pavlin,
Alderman Pavlin, yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Let the record show that Judge Keith Alley has been appointed to serve another term. Okay, next ordinances. We have 5 ordinances to review with public hearing tonight. The first 2 being on the reading, and we'll start off with ordinance 20-25, an ordinance to amend Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 3, specific district regulations, Section 12, general commercial district C1, 3, as it relates to the outdoor display and storage of general farm and implement equipment and lawn equipment, care equipment, riding lawnmowers, related accessories. Farragut Lawn Tractor applicant.
Good evening. This is Mark Shipley. I will present this item this evening. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, I know this is second reading, but since it's been a month since the last meeting, this particular section of the zoning ordinance deals with farm implements and lawn care equipment. So there's really only one entity like that in town currently. And part of the provisions address where equipment and accessories can be stored and displayed. Currently, it's limited to the area that you see that's kind of protruding from the front plane of the building as far as like a permanent display area. The issue we've had is that they've not been able to really comply with that provision, and they've requested a text amendment to have it revisited and to maybe add some flexibility in where they can display some of their products. So when we presented this to the Planning Commission, they did like the idea of adding more options and flexibility for display. They asked the staff to meet on site with the owner to look at options. And basically what we came up with was a 20-foot setback from the front property line. for the display equipment would have to be behind that, no closer than 20 feet from the front property line. And the rationale behind that was that the minimum setback for parking lots is 20 feet from the front property line. So the equipment would be situated roughly in a location where cars would be parked should there be a parking lot in that particular part of the property. So we presented the ordinance to the Planning Commission in November. They did recommend approval, subject to a clarification that basically the merchandise would only be displayed during business hours, which was fine with the owner. And then we presented this on first reading in December 10 meeting, Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And there was a question that came up about the language and where the merchandise could be displayed. That the only parameter at that point was just that it had to be 20 feet from the front property line. So there was a concern that was raised about the potential for, if you had a building that was further back from the street, that if their only setback consideration was just 20 feet from the front property line, they could have a pretty large area to where they could store and display equipment. So even though the ordinance was approved on first reading, the board did ask the staff to go back and add some language that would kind of address that concern. So what we came up with after kind of doing some measurements actually with this property was basically that the equipment and merchandise would have to be 20 feet from the front property line, and then it would have to be within 50 feet of the main front plane of the building, excluding any protrusions. So you wouldn't measure from the area that protrudes closer to the street. It's mainly from the principal front plane of the building, as it's shown right there on that display. So basically you take that line, measure out 50 feet, and you can put the equipment in that space as long as it's 20 feet back from the front property line. So that way it does kind of create a space within which they can put their display, and it doesn't leave it too open-ended. So that's what we're recommending, and what's been reflected and amended in ordinance 20-25. And staff recommends approval of the amended ordinance on second reading.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I'll ask for a motion, please.
This is Alderman Pavlin. Move to approve.
Alderman Pinchuk, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens' questions or comments concerning this item?
I just want to thank Mark and the staff for that drawing and making those changes. Helps me understand more clearly what the area is. So appreciate the efforts. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, I like it. I think it, I like that we're willing to work with the business owner and making it work for them, but also protecting us for any potential future businesses that would try and access these same options. So I think it works good. Thank you, Mark.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, pass.
Vice Mayor Pavlin.
I just want to thank all the reporters for noticing that sometimes things get missed at the Planning Commission. We're looking at things differently, and he brought a different perspective that certainly needed to be addressed. And I think it satisfies and protects us. So I appreciate those efforts, and thank you, Mark, for giving us a drawing so we could see what that actually looked like.
Okay, thank you. I have no comment, and at that point I'll ask the town recorder for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Alderman Pavlin.
Alderman Pavlin, yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Record ordinance 20-25 has been approved on the second reading. The next will be ordinance 20-26, an ordinance amending the general fund and capital investment program for the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, passed by ordinance 20-07.
Yes, sir. There are no changes to this ordinance since the first reading, and the general fund will be increased by $74,831. The capital fund expenditures will be increased to by $177,000, and the revenue sources also be increased for $217,000. And the motion is to approve ordinance 2026 on second and final reading.
Does Alderman Pavlin move to approve?
Alderman Pinchuk, second.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from citizens, please?
No, sir.
None. Okay. We'll move on to board discussion. And we'll start with Alderman Pinchuk.
I'll pass.
Alderman Bennett.
The only thing I'll add is I'm glad to see us taking care of our employees. It's been a tough year, and they've changed a lot of how they do what they do and the number of people that can be around each other. It's been a lot of accommodations made, and I'm glad we're able to have this money available in the budget to say thank you and help out during a difficult time.
Echo that. But Mayor Pavlin.
I have nothing additional. Thank you.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, pass.
Pass. And I'll ask the town recorder for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Pavlin.
Alderman Pavlin, yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, the record show that ordinance 20-07 has been approved or been amended by the ordinance 20-26 on the second reading. And next, we have three on the first reading ordinances. We'll start out ordinance 21-01, an ordinance to amend the future land use plan map in comprehensive land use plan update for a portion of partial 003.19 tax map 143, a portion of the property referenced as 133 Concord associated with the Farragut Town Center Biddle Farms project for medium density residential town center, CLLC applicant.
Okay, this is Mark Shipley again. I'll give an overview of this a little bit. This item and actually the next two relate to a project that it's called the Town Center at Biddle Farms. And actually, this started back, initial meetings on this started back at the end of last March. And since that time, we've actually had 17 public meetings within which this project, some aspect of this project was discussed. So it's been heavily vetted, shall we say. As far as this particular ordinance, this one involves a request to amend the future land use map that's in our comprehensive land use plan. If you look on the screen there, it shows basically the existing and highlighted the area that they're proposing to change. But most of the project, the existing project, has a future land use designation of mixed use town center. That's the purple area. There is an area to the south of that that's kind of outlined in red that is currently medium density residential. And that's a residential land use that allows a density of 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre. So the request is, since this is all one unified horizontal mixed use project, that they're requesting to basically change the brown area to purple and make the whole future land use mixed use town center. So if you go to the next slide, Allison, it'll show what the map would look like after the change. It would all be purple. So that's basically what you would see there. And that makes sense to have it unified under the same land use, especially since this is all, as I mentioned earlier, one project. One thing to note when you're looking at a future land use map versus maybe a zoning map that we'll see on the next item is that the lines are very different between the two. Zoning maps are often usually tied to property lines or some kind of scaled dimension where you can recreate them accurately through meets and bounds. But a future land use map outline is really irregular. It doesn't follow property lines. It's basically just reflects some vision at some point in time of how an area is envisioned to develop at some future time frame. So that's kind of the difference between the two. If you're looking at the maps and you're kind of wondering why the lines kind of, or zigzag on these things, they aren't intended to follow property lines. They're just really intended to demonstrate a certain development, build out vision for that part of the community. So just to give you an overview a little bit of the project itself, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but Allison, if you could maybe go to some, and that map there shows a little bit, if you can kind of see the project kind of underneath the existing future land use, and you can see where most of it's consumed by the purple mixed use town center, but then you have the brown there on the south end. Now, the mixed use town center is the only part of the land use plan, the map and the text, that has been adopted by ordinance. So unlike other areas that may change on the map or in the text, those could be and would be purely a planning commission matter. But any changes that we make to the mixed use town center, whether we're adding or taking away from the map or changing language, all that has to go through both the planning commission and the board of mayor and aldermen through an ordinance. So that's another kind of difference. And the reason for that is that the strategy 1 in our plan talks about bringing about a downtown, and that's always been something that the community has expressed that they really wanted the town to work on and focus on. So the board of mayor and aldermen adopted the mixed use town center for that reason, to give it some additional review and scrutiny since it was such an important area. So let's go through some of the information dealing with the plan. And again, the applicant can speak more about the details. I'm just going to give you a broad brush review here. If you look on this image, this is the concept master plan layout. To the left is Kingston Pike. On the lower part of the screen is Brookline, and then you've got Concord Road at the upper part, kind of where that drive goes upward, almost due east. So that's kind of orients you to where you're at. The part that's closer to Kingston Pike, basically back to where pretty much the old Kroger building is situated currently, is proposed to be a commercial area, and that's where you would have the town center street, the commercial buildings that are brought up closer to the street, kind of a pedestrian friendly environment. There is a small footprint grocery store as part of the commercial project. And then kind of in the middle there, that circular open space area is a village green. And that's about 285 feet long and about 65 feet wide. And that kind of serves as an outdoor gathering space for community events. It's proposed to be actually town property. So we envision that as not only a focal point for this development, but a focal point for the community as a whole. To the south of the Village Green area, then there's a multifamily component to this that would provide for enough residents that would be in a convenient walking distance to help sustain the commercial part of the project. Again, it's a kind of a horizontal mixed-use development where there's not the mixture of uses within the same building, but they end up supporting each other and integrated collectively together. They're not separated by gates and fences and not connected with access ways, vehicular and pedestrian. So it's kind of a one integrated multiple use type project. To the rest of the project is future development. You've got the floodplain up on the upper part of the screen, and probably some stormwater detention area in that general part of the project, because obviously that's where the stormwater would drain. So let's see. Once you go to the next slide here, this is what they're proposing as you are coming into the project from Kingston Pike. That's kind of their iconic element that kind of invites you into the commercial part of the project. Maybe go to the next slide, please. So as you come in, this is kind of what you're going to see. Again, it's kind of a town center look and feel. Commercial buildings on each side, on-street parking, a lot of outdoor seating and gathering spaces, very pedestrian-friendly environment. Next slide. And this is just some images of the commercial buildings. Next slide. And this is some images of the multifamily buildings that they're proposing. They are proposed to be 4-story. And that's what roughly at this point what they're proposing for that. Next slide. Some additional images. The upper left image shows that village square, which is basically between the commercial and the multifamily, kind of bringing the two together, and also the larger community. Let's see anything else there. This image shows open space areas. The dark green would be like parkland, open space. You see the village square there in the center. And then on the upper part of the screen, you see basically a linear path, walking trail loop that's also connected to Concord Road through a sidewalk. Then all of the pedestrian facilities are connected internally and externally. All right, next slide. That's showing the public street system that's proposed at this point. Some are existing, some are going to be renovated, improved. Let's see, this is, I don't really have anything on that. I think I'll talk about that a little bit on the next item about the narrative in relation to this project. Basically, and I'll let the applicant talk a little bit more about it, but something that I brought up when this was going through the Planning Commission, actually back in November, was that this project, if you look at our comprehensive land use plan, the main component of that is the first section that talks, it has 8 strategies that are in the plan, and it talks about that the town, that at the time, the consultant and the community identified these things that they wanted us to work on. This project, just in looking at those 8 strategies, actually, addresses 6 of the 8. It does check off the box on a number of the things that are provided in the plan. For example, the first one is, as I mentioned earlier in talking about the mixed-use town center, and that is bringing about a downtown. This project obviously creates a main street that we saw in an earlier image, and brings about a lot of the components that you would see in a downtown. Second thing, repairing aging shopping centers. Obviously, this project addresses that. We have the old Kroger building that this would be removing and replacing with something new, including all the infrastructure, both utilities and existing streets and pedestrian facilities. Encouraging greater housing choice. As I mentioned, multifamily is a component of this proposal. It does provide for, a density housing choice that can help support and sustain the town center. Fourth thing that it addresses is increasing connectivity. This project has probably more connectivity than any that I've looked at in a while. You can see all the connection points just on that image, both vehicular and pedestrian. Enhancing our identity is another strategy that's identified in the plan. Obviously, this plan can certainly help in that regard by creating a unique kind of development and also providing for that central gathering space, the village square. And then finally, planning for remaining vacant parcels. Obviously, a lot of this property has been in need of being, redeveloped and part of it developed. And this particular project certainly addresses that to a great extent. So for all those reasons, as I explained at the Planning Commission meeting, I think that the project does move us forward and much closer toward incrementally achieving or working toward many of the strategies that were identified back in 2012. So for that reason, at the Planning Commission meeting in November, the requested change to the future land use map through Ordinance 21-01 was unanimously recommended. And the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 21-01 on first reading.
Ron,
That's
do you
all
want
I've got to say.
should I go ahead and make a motion right now before we get everything else started? You're muted, Mayor Williams.
Sorry.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Please.
Okay, I'm going to move to approve.
Alderman Meyer, second.
Thank you. We are now ready for citizens' questions and comments to be read into the record. Specifically for this particular ordinance?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Get my stuff up here. All right, our first one is Penny Scott at 11157 Hewland Drive. He says, vote against Ordinance 2101. And Daniel Herford at 109 Jamestown says, come to my attention that the first reading of ordinances 2101, 02, and 03 is scheduled for January 14th. It is not clear from the published agenda, but there is community concern and discussion that these changes will allow for apartments to be built in Farragut. Generally, I think you will find sentiment towards apartment complexes to be a negative, and the community would certainly want to have hearings or public discussions related to the changes. I simply want to share my voice as a community member. The next one is Jamie Ray at 700 Foxdale Lane. As a resident of Farragut, I'm very disheartened by the direction the town is taking. I am against approving any additional apartments and against the development at Biddle Farms. The next one is Robbie Edens at 238 West Heritage Drive. I have a few questions. Why is the developer's preferred project overruling the citizens' preferred project? Why is the Board of Mayor and Aldermen capitulating to the developer? How is two strip malls and an apartment complex superior to a residential overall retail and an a la Market Square Gay Street in the Old City? I look forward to your responses. The next one is Mario Vella at 306 Johnson's Corner. Hello, Town of Farragut. It does not seem pertinent to allow multifamily development in that particular area of Farragut around the town center. We need to protect not only the area from the disruption on increased traffic that multiple family constructions would bring, but also the look and feel of the entire area. I want to voice my disagreement on the proposal for the upcoming meeting. The next one is Mrs. Webb at 11826 Lakehurst. I would like to voice my concern about the new apartment developments. Approval of more apartment developments need to be halted until what is in progress is complete and the effects on our school system and road infrastructure is evaluated. We need to be more focused on recreational developments, restaurant, and small shopping. Next one is Rosemary Portwood at 811 Sellview Road. I object to apartments being built in the middle of Farragut where a Market Square style center was to be built. I've lived in Farragut since 1986, and this is not what I and most residents want to see in the center of our town. Please don't ruin it. The next one, Ashley Hurley at 12341 Comblaine. Please stop ramming apartments down our throats while this pandemic rages. This has caused the public that voted you in not to be able to have any input into the meetings to discuss the town's development. I voted for Scott and Louise thinking they would protect my best interest, and it looks like though they did not have anyone else's interest in mind. An Aldi with some banks, tire stores, and a few dentist offices does not make a town center. At one time, I thought the property adjacent to the town hall was going to be the town center based on proposals I had seen, but now they've chosen an undesirable piece of land that already is in an overcrowded area. Please stop taking advantage of the situation and delay discussions until the public can attend the meetings, or open the meetings back up for participants to attend now. Next one is Joy Riggleman at 113 Jamestown. I'm concerned about the excessive amount of apartments being developed in this area. It will bring down property values and increase traffic and change the overall vibe of Farragut. It claims to have a small town feel. It's headed towards overcrowding. Apartments have a high turnover and will not create a sense of pride and ownership in one's property, community, and public spaces. Farragut will simply be a stepping stone on the way to something better. Marianne Aiken at 569 Wyndham Hill Road. I'm writing concerning ordinances 2101, 02, and 03. These ordinances will change forever the nature of the town of Farragut. They will allow a number of apartments to be built on the Biddle farm property that do not create the town center the people of Farragut indicated they wanted in 2012. The decision is too important to the people of Farragut to be decided without another survey and meetings that people can physically attend. Please postpone the decision until the vaccine makes it safe for public meetings. If this developer cannot wait, then I'm sure another one can be found in the future. This is not a decision to be pushed through during a pandemic. Next one is John Aiken at 12144 Brookstone Drive. I have many concerns regarding the apartments to be built as part of the Farragut Town Center. Increased traffic in the largest school zone and one of the most is my greatest concern. The safety of our school children should be one of the highest priorities. Increasing the amount of traffic in the largest school zone does not reflect the priority of safety for our children of the township. Another concern I have is with the horizontal mixed-use approval, these apartment buildings will look nothing like the vertical mixed-use buildings. The resident surveys that were done circa 2012 were for vertical mixed-use buildings. I've lived in the township since 2003 when my parents moved here from West Knoxville. One of the reasons my family chose to live in Farragut was because of the restrictions for future buildings. With the restrictions lifted, the new buildings will look no different than other parts of West Knox County. Horizontal mixed use will also allow for more residential density, thus increasing traffic, safety-related issues, especially in the school zone. Before going through such projects, shouldn't public input be revisited as was done before? I ask that ordinances 2101, 02, and 03 be tabled until there are better circumstances when residents are not ill or fear becoming ill from the COVID-19 pandemic. Maria Schaefer at 11325 Woodcliff. I strongly oppose any proposed or planned dwelling and living apartment construction on the Biddle Farm. This will greatly affect our already overpopulated schools, traffic, and property values over time. Being in a flood zone, this will create more problems in the community. Please don't let money talk. Listen to the people and do what's in their best interest. You are given a responsibility you vowed to do. do the best for your abilities for the residents of Farragut. Please don't let the people of Farragut and its community down. Thank you for doing your best and right thing, praying for your enlightenment and wisdom. Next one is Pamela Hill at 319 Cashmere Lane. I've been a Farragut resident since 2014. We moved here because it was a quaint town and easy access to downtown Knoxville, but still had a small town feel. Shopping areas were convenient to get to, but did not completely take over the area we saw in the Bearden area. 6 years later, our quaint town is turning into a congested, overpopulated area that is no longer desirable. I would have moved closer to downtown or Bearden if I wanted traffic, strip centers, and apartments in every green space. The Farragut infrastructure cannot handle the numerous multifamily living apartments being built. I have 4 kids who have attended the Farragut schools. Each school currently has overcrowding issues as well. What will happen when more kids are added due to construction and multifamily living? The traffic on Kingston Pike is already horrendous during school times. Imagine what will occur with apartments feeding into the same area. I want to remain in our small, quaint town and enjoy the gem that we have here. Please do not approve the multifamily units and/or the strip center at the old Kroger location. Next one is Randall Roberts at 11905 Butternut and Elise Harris at 11929 West Kingsgate. I would like to voice my family's opposition concerning your recent actions regarding the development of the Biddle farm, especially the rezoning for the purpose of allowing the massive number of apartments to be included in this said development. We lack the necessary infrastructure to support the development at this time or any time in the immediate future, especially concerning traffic congestion and the already overcrowding condition at 3 Farragut schools. In many ways, this is putting the cart before the horse. I am sure that the BOMA members have been following or are aware of the massive opposition to this project based on comments posted on the Nextdoor website and through other sources available to them. As much as I respect you as individuals and your willingness to serve our community, the way this is being handled is so out of the norm, it's actually unimaginable from our perspective, if not yours. COVID restrictions have created many concerns as to the manner in which this project is being pushed through the town of Farragut. We request that this and any other such development be placed on hold until such a time that residents may provide input and discussion in a more normal and acceptable manner, i.e. in person and verbal discussions before town meetings. We also request that the BOMA develop a new comprehensive land use plan based on the new input from the current residents of Farragut. A lot has changed in recent years, and those changes should be reflected in a new CLUP based on the input and opinions of those living in our town, as well as those who may be impacted by the decisions pertaining to such a study. We can do better than this. Gloria Dyer at 10808 Farragut Hills Boulevard. I oppose the 4-story apartments on the Biddle property at the corner of Campbell Station and Concord Road, behind the old Kroger and by Pleasant Hill Cemetery. It is in a floodplain and will take over 7,000 dump trucks of fill dirt just to bring up the land, plus the traffic and destruction of the view would be heartbreaking. This was supposed to be a town center with shopping and green space. Douglas Dillon at 338 Axton Drive. Suspend any action regarding the town center and then request community input before going forward. Next one is Tim Wakowicz at Concord Hills at 11113 Windward Drive. I just wanted to send in a comment supporting your work in the new development. Thanks for all the job y'all do. Mindy Clark at 12406 Comlane. Hi, my family and I just moved here from San Diego, California. We've been here for 2 months and I've already taken aback at how beautiful the area is. But after learning more and more about how much development is about to take place, I became sad and reminded that one of the reasons we left California was because so little green space was left. Please don't do this to Farragut. Please reconsider how much you are building and think of the people you will drive away who are escaping other cities doing the same in other states. Thank you for consideration. Joyce Carmack at 11140 Hewlin Drive. Voicing my sincere displeasure with the planning apartment development at the old Krogers. Please don't add any more congestion to this already congested area, please. Jane Roberts at East Foxton Drive. To our elected officials, I'm writing to oppose the construction of apartments on the Biddle property. In my opinion, it is not what the citizens voted for in the comprehensive land use plan, as well as the town's current infrastructures, including roads and schools, is not compatible for handling the increase. Farragut traffic has become suffocating at times throughout the day, and staggering the school times is not the answer. Likewise, an additional 400-plus multifamily units here in Farragut is in the near future will only exacerbate the current situation. I would like to see Representative Zachary and Representative Briggs ask for federal assistance in the completion of another exit between Campbell Station Road and Watt Road. Thank you for taking your time to listen to my concerns. Mike and Susan Bartle at 607 Gwenhurst. We do not want to see more apartments in Farragut. Listen to your residents and change these plans now. Our roads and schools are already overcrowded, and I've lost count of how many existing empty commercial property buildings there are across Farragut. Empty strip mall after strip mall all over town. And you want to build more by calling it a mixed-use town center. Stop this and show some leadership, please. Desiree Keener at 11431 Woodcliff Drive. I oppose apartments being built on the old Biddle property. I think a town center would be lovely, but I don't think that the area can accommodate the huge increase of population that apartments would bring. Thank you. Patrick Lee at 405 Ensign Lane, Farragut. I highly object to the approval of Ordinance 2101 on many grounds, but primarily one. 2101, an ordinance to amend the Farragut future land use plan map and the comprehensive land use plan update, has been placed on the vote today in violation of the very spirit of the document itself. In the document, states the comprehensive land use plan update, which occurred in 2012, was a very public process. Specifically, several different stakeholders, focus group meetings were held. Extensive public outreach was conducted with community dialogue and public meetings. From the input gathered during the multitude of meetings, the comprehensive land use plan was developed. When this plan for a mixed-use town center document was being created, the town felt it critical to conduct a survey to identify the desires of the township. The town provided extensive public outreach during the time. The town termed it the community dialogue and public meetings, and several different stakeholders and focus group meetings, as the town says, is in their own words posted here. The town now seeks to make these changes with virtually zero extensive public outreach and stakeholders and focus group meetings. What gives? Why is this so critical? Extensively court the will of the Farragut residents to create the plan and not when you seek to turn it on its head? Why is there no opportunity to challenge the Farragut public servants who, by definition, purport to serve us? Has the mayor forgotten that fact? Who serves who in this metric? This is a double standard of epic proportions. Politicians have an obligation, a sacred bond of trust should exist with their constituents. This bond has been irrevocably broken due to the instance in the town leaders to defy the will of the residents, which the town sought out and accepted during the creation of the plan. The entire assembled group of mayor and aldermen are complicit with the maleficent of the residents' demand that you stop and pay attention to us. We, the people, we fund this town and all that occurs within its bounds. We sign the front of the check and direct you to do our bidding, not the reverse, which you have attempted to foist on us of late. The lack of awareness will lead to a new slate of town leaders the next election cycle. These are natural consequences to your continued abuse of goodwill. Be aware you should continue this course. Legal action will follow. Hayden Oakley at 11103 Crum Point. In regards to the zoning amendment to the Biddle property or any aspect of the town center, please listen to the majority of Farragut residents and vote no, or at the very least delay the vote to get legitimate community feedback. This is not what the citizens want, and all I ask is that you take an opportunity to hear the people you represent. It's been clear over the last couple of months that your minds have been made up, which is unfortunate. The justification that the residents want a walkable town center, I think that would be nice. However, residents do not agree on the compromises are being made to get what is being called a walkable town center. I've heard from BOMA members that our style of town is dying. I'm sure not seeing that. Yes, there is a desire for a downtown-like community, but there is a strong desire for a suburban community as well. It doesn't take much to see that Farragut is still the most desirable place to live in the area, even without a town center. I doubt this email will make any difference, as the clear minds are made up that Biddle apartments are already turning into Ford apartments and behind Ingalls and other places near the proposed town center. If we want to live downtown, we would have moved there. Creating a downtown that is not actually walkable to the majority of residents doesn't benefit us more than the congestion will harm us. Please vote against this project. Jack Goebel at 11104 Crown Point. We are not in favor of the town center that includes an apartment complex of any kind. Not only will it be an eyesore to the community, no matter how nice it is starts out, it won't stay that way. Traffic will be unbearable as it is a problem already. Our family has moved state to state several times and have lived in an apartment here in Farragut as well, temporarily twice. Both times the experience was unpleasant at best. There were multiple issues and attitudes in that environment that were unpleasant and disrupting. We feel this will drive our home prices down in all directions surrounding the complex. Another issue is school overcrowding, which I have heard from multiple members of our diverse community since I've moved here almost 2 years ago. This was a concern way before the issue of a new apartment complex even was on the docket. Please do the right thing and vote no to the additional apartments in the town center. Theodora Callahan at 11630 South Monticello. As a Farragut resident, I wish to express my concern over the closed meetings and the way the Farragut residents have been overlooked and dismissed when objecting to the zoning and proposed construction of the Biddle farm. The traffic is so bad now and it will only get worse. What is wrong with you? You completely dismiss the objection by so many residents. Remember who you represent. You're supposed to represent the residents and comply with the wishes to expressed to you. I am totally outraged at the lack of responsibility. Next one is Sherry Bolin at 321 Battlefront. I'm a resident of Farragut Crossing since 1994. What drew us to Farragut was a peaceful, beautiful, safe community which was close to conveniences. The area honestly felt neighborly because we had enough stores and restaurants around and could easily get to more if we chose. I'm personally opposed to the Biddle property apartments. I think it would negatively impact our community with increased traffic and also being just unattractive. No matter how many are built, it's still large buildings and parking lots. People move into homes in our neighborhoods because it's still a peaceful area. Please don't mess that up. For progress. John Lunn at 533 Hidden Grove. I'm writing to voice my opposition to the vote to be held Thursday on this apartments on Biddle farm property. My initial thought is that this is not what the people of Farragut want. This includes me. However, I have not heard the other side of the situation and have not heard why it would be a good thing to have these apartments in our town. It seems the people have not had the opportunity to be educated or heard in this matter, and it appears that our elected officials are trying to slide something by us. I'm sure that isn't the case, but it certainly is the appearance. I only ask that you educate us on the reasons why this is a good thing and then listen to our concerns and support. The decision should be an easy one at that point, and the community will feel as it was heard. At this point, that is not the case, and it appears to be very deceitful. Gloria and Jeff Goris at 11626 Channing. We would request the board please reconsider the density for this project. A 4-story apartment complex is just too much for the area. Michelle Cox at 12033 Broadwood. I'm writing in reference to the vote tonight for 3 zoning amendments. I am completely appalled and against the proposal that would change the zoning to allow apartments to be added in the heart of Farragut. Our town has turned into vacant buildings and tire stores. Our schools are maxed out on the plumbing for portable classrooms. There are plenty of apartments in the Farragut vicinity. There is no need for more traffic and have a trailer classrooms added to with more students. I think it is the time that our town leaders start listening to the majority of the residents who are completely opposed to this. It's unfortunate that we need to continue to fight our town so it can do what the people want. I'm a 15-year citizen, Farragut school parent, and Knox County school employee. I'm adamantly opposed to this proposal, as does everyone I have spoken to. Leanne Newman at 825 Spinnaker. Good morning. I'm a Farragut resident that's been here since January of 2005. No apartments, no apartments, no apartments. Our schools are already at overcapacity and the traffic is worse by the day. It comes down to starting to ruin our community's quality of life. Stop, just stop, no apartments. Robert Heierholzer at 208 Woodland Trace Drive. I gather you will be voting tomorrow about allowing apartments to be built in the Farragut Town Center. I'm highly opposed to this for several reasons. At the core of these concerns is that it appears to you, our elected officials, seemed intent on constant expansion and growth without a commensurate concern of the vital infrastructure. Number 1, inadequate roads. Building the proposed apartments will worsen traffic in the Kingston Pike Campbell Station Road area. It is already a nightmare for us to try and make a left turn on the Campbell Station Road from Sonia due to heavy traffic and the unenforced speed limits. There are other areas in town where traffic is increasingly snarled. Lack of police force. At what point can we expect the sheriff to properly adequate crime prevention? I think we've crossed the point where the police force is needed. Has Knox County committed greater resources for our growing population as Farragut growth has continued? I've been told by my representative that enforcement of speed limits on Camel Station Road can't really be expected because it is not a priority over the overextended sheriff. I imagine that once someone is killed on Camel Station Road because of violation of speed limits, I routinely have people pass me doing 60, then something will be done. Number 3, a lack of a fire department. Paying for fire protection is voluntarily, and I gather about 50% pay. The other 50% are deriving benefits, a standing fire department, which would not be possible unless someone paid. If you want a bigger city, the bigger city infrastructure needs to be provided. How can you knowingly allow some citizens to bear the financial burdens for others on something that's so basic to cities and towns? Number 4, inadequate sewer systems. We are now facing watering and water use restrictions because our water provider says our sewers are inadequate. We lived in California with water restrictions. Once such restrictions start, they don't end, they just expand. Again, if you want a bigger city, we need adequate infrastructure. If we have watering restrictions, why not growth restrictions? It seems to me that the policy of nearly unrestrained growth has not been accompanied by any careful analysis of the necessary infrastructure or how the residents feel. Be assured that anyone holding office for which I will not vote will not have my vote the next time if they support these apartments. Michael Bose at 12117 Aspenwood and John and Cecily Schemes at 12121 Aspenwood. I'm writing in reference to the vote tonight for 3 zoning amendments. I'm completely against the proposal that would change the zoning to allow apartments to be added in the heart of Farragut. I think it is time that our town leaders start listening to the majority of the residents who are completely opposed to this. It is unfortunate that we need to continue to fight our town so that we'll do what the people want. I would also like to add that there is no reason at this time that meetings cannot be held in person at an outdoor venue. The town of Farragut has so many beautiful parks that can utilize for this with no issues. I believe the majority of residents would have no problem with attending and being able to voice their opinion. And that is all of them for ordinance 2101.
Okay, thank you, Allison. And also thank you, citizens. We appreciate you sending in your input, and we listen, and we are working on some of the things that you brought up, and we're working on that daily. And you'll see some of the results here in the future. But right now, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our applicant and let him start with his presentation, please. Mr. Cullen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and members of the board, and thank you, Mark, for the wonderful job you did in presenting the overview of the project. Before I go any further, I want to make sure that everyone can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, all right. I lost one of the little screens there, so I wasn't sure. I want to make sure everyone could hear me and see me. So in any event, I'd like to say that I'd like to step back and kind of give an overview to begin with, if I can take the time, of how this project came about. I want to thank Mark once again, and I also want to point out one of the reasons, in my opinion, that Mark did such a wonderful job on explaining so much of this project is the very fact that we have been working on this project in earnest with the planning staff and the planning commission members. And I think Mark may have alluded to something along the lines of 17 or 19 public meetings, counting the staff developer meetings. But the staff and the planning commission really took this seriously. And we have, since about February or March of last year, through these meetings with concept plan meetings, with overview meetings, with workshops, with staff developer meetings, every single time that we have gone through and had lengthy discussions on these, There have been comments that have come from staff and from planning commissioners, and even from some of the aldermen who participated, with ideas and critique. Call coming in and blacken my screen. Sorry about that. But each time ideas came out of those discussions, and although it took time and effort, we went back and we would take those and we would make those changes. And we are excited now because we really feel that we have come up with a horizontal mixed-use town center plan that, as Mark said, checks off most of the boxes that were the original goals. And I will at some point this evening certainly go back and answer some detailed questions. But I would like to say that this plan, I've listened to Allison read these emails, and I appreciate input from residents. I grew up in Farragut. My wife grew up in Farragut. We both graduated from Farragut High School. My in-laws are buried at Pleasant Hill Cemetery, so the area still means a lot. My wife's mother's house is on Ida Hertzler. I know that she and her neighbors were initially concerned when the Costco came. After it came, they loved it, and they certainly don't feel like their home values have been impacted negatively. If anything, I would argue they've been impacted positively. We were approached back in late 18 or 19 by a couple members of the Farragut Business Alliance to ask us if we would be willing to meet with town staff and look at the idea of the Biddle property and trying to create a town center. And initially I was hesitant, but we met, and the more I looked at it, I felt like the location was superior. I had hated the fact that for, at that time, over 10, now probably approaching 13 years, that the Kroger, what I'll call the old Kroger, has sat vacant. And in working through various ideas, the initial thought was, okay, can we create a vertical mixed-use town center? After further studying, realized that because of the fact of having to do structured parking and various other components of a vertical mixed use, that from an economic standpoint and for other reasons, we didn't feel like that was the way to go. To try to create a commercial part that felt like you were coming down a main street that still had what we will call our anchor tenant, the small footprint grocery, as Mark mentioned, to get that in, but to try to hide the parking field and still create the town center feel, and then have it tie into something, namely in this case, the multifamily, that gave more energy and vibrancy to our project. How can we do that? And we came up with this general plan, but it has been refined. And I would like to point out that a couple of what we now feel like, or I'll say two of the biggest refinements, weren't even our ideas. They were town staff and planning commission members' ideas. And those namely were to move buildings closer to Brooklawn, alter Brooklawn to allow street parking, with the idea that would tend to create Brooklawn being, from the look of an arterial road, more to a smaller downtown road. The other idea was, if you see where we're showing the town, what we'll call the town square or the town green, that was an idea that was originally shown as just a roundabout with a fountain. And I can't remember specifically whose idea, but someone from the town mentioned the idea of taking out the roundabout. And the more this moved to the town green, the more we liked it. And I'll pause here a second if I can. And Allison, can you go to the rendering pictures, and I will try to find which page I probably am looking at.
Are you looking for the pictures, like the concept pictures like this, or more of the?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and start there. So you know,
Okay.
so our thought is, as Mark said, if you're pulling in here, this directly lines up. The opposite side of this would be Lyndon Welch Way, which leads into Farragut High School. So our thought is, as you're pulling in here, you feel like you're entering more of a main street. Now, if you can scroll to the next picture. So you're coming down Main Street, you've got the angled parking on street, you've got a lot of the landscaping that's streetscape. Go to the next slide. And these are some images that put you a little more down at ground level. One thing I might point out is as you're looking at these images, the bottom two pictures would correlate to being at the first intersection. And if you're looking to the right, you are looking back toward Brooklawn, and that would be the depiction of the small scale grocery. And if you can scroll to the next slide. So our feeling and desire with the part of the multifamily being 4-story, not all of it is, but the part that frames the town green, our desire and our belief is that as you're driving down Main Street, you're being pulled toward a traditional town square. In this case, we're just showing it initially as a lawn, but then you're seeing a taller, more of a massing of buildings that would lead you to the feel that you're coming into a small downtown. I hear, and I've read the comments, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say 95%, if not more, of the comments that were negative to this project had to do with apartments. And I want to say that apartments, what they maybe were considered 20 and 30 years ago, and what we're planning here, I believe, are completely different. We're planning a product here that is going to appeal to a higher demographic, be they younger professionals all the way to retired people. And there's a market of people that would prefer to rent. Is there still a market that prefers to own? Yes, and I will get to that in a little bit on our next phase if this project goes. But these units that we're talking about are from $1,500 to $2,500 a month units. It's going to be a clientele that's in apartments or multifamily, not because they can't afford to own a house. It's because that's the lifestyle they want. A lot of them also want to be in an area where they have a town square like this, and they have restaurants and shopping that they can walk to and walking trails. And so if you look at this, actually go to the next slide if you can. I've got it. So if you look at the image on the top left, that depicts the town square. To the right is where Main Street, as you're coming in, is hitting the town square. Both of the buildings on that area right there, I'm in talks with 3 separate local restaurateurs, not for a relocated location, but for additional locations. I'm not at liberty of saying their name, but when I approached them about the project, they all came and said, we want to be right here on this town square. In fact, one of them is so excited about it that they have reached out to the town staff to make sure that the plan, if this project were to go forward, that the town would in fact want to hold events, be they charitable events, be they farmers markets, be they concerts in the park, you name it, so that there's always a town vibe, if you will, going on, and stages can be set up. All different things can be done on that lawn. And I also want to say and address a number of comments that were made. Several specifically alluded to why couldn't we have the vertical town center, or why can't we have Market Square? And a couple points I want to make sure people realize is, one, Market Square has way more apartments within a walking distance to Market Square than the 286 units that are a part of our complex. Two, I would like to, I'd like to ask people to kind of try to visualize something. And if you're looking at that picture on the top left, and you close your eyes and you think of Market Square, and you picture Market Square, but instead of the pavement in the Market Square, it's a lawn. And then open your eyes. That's what you see. The multifamily to the left may be multifamily, but it still has the feel of the buildings that are in Market Square. And in fact, that alludes to a new planning initiative that's been going on for the past several years. Most people probably have heard of it, but it's called form-based zoning. And the gist of the form-based zoning is the looks of the buildings and the massing and the scale, more so than the actual use. So my argument would be, we can't, for economic reasons, make a vertical mixed use work. Even if we could, the density, the added traffic, so on and so forth, that people have questioned would be as much, if not greater. But we can create a horizontal mixed use that has the residents, built-in residents, to help support not only the commercial, but give a sense of vibrancy to the town square and the other walkable areas. And it will be something that will then draw the rest of the residents who like the idea of parking and be able to go to a retail shop, be able to go to a lunch spot, be able to go to a upscale restaurant with lots of outdoor dining, and sit outdoors and watch while there's a concert going on or a charity event going on in the town park. And the vibrancy is created from the fact that you have a mixed use and not a single use. So again, I apologize for rambling, but I appreciate the time. I appreciate the fact that Mark went through some of the details, but I also point out that we have done extensive studies as to the drainage. We've done extensive studies with the traffic. We have been in conversations with staff as recently as today on making tweaks to the facades to maybe a nod toward even a little more traditional feel. And we're certainly willing to continue that effort, and we've been given pictures today, and we have our architect is listening in on this, and he has already told me, based on these pictures, that we can make some changes that would be more of a nod to these pictures. The traffic study, I'd like to point out, clearly points out the fact that the development we're proposing would create as much of a third less traffic in the end as if the property was simply developed out as it's shown now. Also want to address some of the comments that came up. Tire stores, more stores, vacant stores. We don't need any more of those. I agree with that. That's what we're eliminating with this development. We have a really, what I would say is a blighted former Kroger building, and I am really, really anxious to turn that into what we're showing on this main street. I have rambled. I appreciate the opportunity, and I know that there will be many more details that people maybe would like to ask me as we move forward, but I appreciate the opportunity to give an overview of the project. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you, Mr. Film. I think we had numerous questions that people were maybe not aware of a lot of things that you have going here, and this is give probably a lot of people watching and listening in a little bit more of an overview that they may not have known before. And again, I thank you. So we'll move on now to board discussion, and we'll start with Vice Mayor Pavlin.
Actually, I wanted to ask Bud a question first before I start. I heard from a lot of residents that early on that were saying they just wanted they like the shopping. They want the shopping part. They just don't want the apartment part. And my point in return to them, and I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong, is we can only have this walkable, pedestrian-oriented shopping in the form that it is because because there's a plan for residential that's built in. Otherwise, in the suburbs, you got to build that in a car-centric manner, which is basically what we have across the street in Brooklawn, which is the buildings aren't built for pedestrian friendliness; they're built for car centricity. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is very accurate, and as I have said before, it's kind of twofold. In order to create the infrastructure and preserve the amount of green space, and to have things like the town square, both from and afford the land cost, I might add, but both from an initial constructability and economic standpoint, but even more important going forward is the vibrancy that is created by having people in upper scale residences, be they townhomes or apartments, living and walking right there as a part of your community, being able to walk out their doors and within 5 minutes or less be able to be in the town square, be able to be in the grocery store, be able to be in the clothing store or the art gallery or the lunch spot or the dinner spot. That is what creates the sense of place and the vibrancy that keeps it going, because otherwise, I hate to sound this way, but otherwise you just have another strip center like what you have across the street with Kroger.
Thank you. That's what I thought. So I just wanted to get confirmation on that because I had explained that to some folks that, and it's in this form that, and this is only my impression. In this form, we have an opportunity to attract businesses we may not otherwise attract, those smaller, unique boutiques that are looking for that more upscale feel that you may not have from a strip mall running on Kingston Pike.
I think that's just so accurate. There's still, it's mentioned that in any kind of town center that I've ever seen, it is a mixed use. Whether it's vertical or horizontal, it's still mixed use. And typically in 90% plus of the town centers that I've seen, again, vertical or horizontal, a big component of that is rental multifamily. And there is a market for more of a townhome condominium type. That was actually brought up to me initially by one of the aldermen who hopefully will take credit for it tonight, but mentioned that to me months ago, and I went with it, and it has enough support now with my residential partner and the studies that we have done, that the area, as you're looking at this plan, the area between the two detention area ponds that are in the light green, as opposed to coming up more with a commercial use for that in the future, we actually feel like that can be a higher value townhome condominium type development. I've been asked about the density and how many if we propose that. We're not far enough along to say exactly, but some of the plans that we've laid out on that, it's probably somewhere in the 30 to on the low end to 50 on the high end. I'm going to probably say call it somewhere around 40 units that would max out on that. But I know some people have said that they like the idea because then you would truly have residential, commercial together, and you would have rental and owned and two different looks. And we're excited about that.
And thank you for answering that. And one last point that some people are, I think, confused. I know that we have what looks to be about 11 buildings that are shops, but it is my understanding that, and obviously I know anytime in my business, we only take up a small portion of the entire building. This will have more than the 11 shops. It will have, it will be broken down and more flexible space, I would assume. So if somebody comes along and wants to build out in 2,000 square feet or whatever it is, they could possibly do that. Or if they want a smaller slot, there's a possibility for that. Could you explain that?
Absolutely. Those shops, as they're laid out, and I realize we're looking at the overall plan so that they get a little bit small, but each one of those pods of shops are approximately 4,800 square feet. There are a couple of the ones back by the town square that the restaurateurs that I was referring to are talking about taking all of that, if not even a little more. But some of these other ones I could see being broken up as small as 1,200 square foot shops in each one. One of the things that we did purposely, and it kind of right before the COVID situation arose, is we didn't want too much square footage. So we broke these shops and had outdoor landscaped area for more socializing and or outdoor seating for a restaurant as a way of limiting the square footage. Now, COVID came along and made us look smarter than we really were, because now we think that that is a real benefit. As we all know, whether it be waiting to go in a store or waiting to go in a restaurant or eating outside, the new mantra is outdoor, outdoor, outdoor. And we look and say, not only do we have this town square that's the size of a football field or larger, we have all of these other aspects of congregating, socializing, eating, and being outside, but on foot as you're shopping, as you're dining, so on and so forth. And we haven't even gotten to the point back where all of the walking trails and all of the rest of the green space. So, I can point that out right now. So many people say, why are you taking away all of our green space? I think what people will find is this is creating and maintaining a tremendous amount of green space, and it's reclaiming some green space that right now is a 40-year-old empty Kroger building. Anyway, I'll shut up again.
Well, that was one of the final points I was going to ask you to make is, from my calculations, I know it's about 43.63 acres is the total area. And it sounds like from what I've learned from the discussions, about 30 acres of that is developable. So that's leaving you 13, 14 acres of basically what is open space. I know part of it's flood zone, but still that's open space that is attractive nature to have around. I understand that the Biddles plan on leaving their horse farm there for a while. And that to me is another asset that people can walk by and see, keeping that space open and natural looking. Yes, I don't think people realize how much of that space is left to open space.
It's, as you're looking at this image, again, the size of the property, and it's a little hard to tell on an overview, but you see a lot of green there, a lot more green than you would typically see. And you might, if you could scroll to, Allison, there's a almost like a half of a plan that Mark said he didn't really have anything to comment on. I think go back the other way. Back, I'm showing it on mine as slide 9 of 11. It's no, go. I think it's toward the bottom of the slides that we provided. Might go back the other way. You scroll, keep scrolling. Keep going. Keep scrolling.
David's helping me figure out which one.
I think it's the next one, Allison.
Just scroll, you'll come to it. There. So this plan is a highly detailed section of a grading plan. But one of the things I want to point out, you see in red, it shows the existing barn, and it shows existing trees. And one of the there's been some comments from Concord Hills and from the Thornton Heights area as to the view corridor and how we would be putting this ugly apartment building and ruining the view. And I want to point out that that entire area down Turkey Creek right there is is a floodway area. And in that floodway, those trees have to remain. So that whole tree line will remain, and on both sides of the creek, and it'll remain there in perpetuity. And we have jogging trails that will be going down through and looping all the way along the creek and looping back along the multifamily, tying right back into the town square. So again, you can go back to the main concept plan because that's kind of an ugly plan right there to look at, but I wanted to point out the fact about those trees. Here. Vice Mayor, did I answer your questions?
You did. I appreciate it. I just had a few points of that I had been thinking about and that I had tried to address with some of the citizens that I've been speaking to, and I just wanted clarity on that. So I'll go ahead and get started on some of my thoughts. I wanted to, when I started reading some of the feedback that we were receiving from citizens, I realized that I needed to kind of come back to all the way back to property rights and town planning. And I will very briefly gloss over that because I know that certainly our board understands this, but I think it's something that I need to make a mention of because private property rights are protected in the United States Constitution and the state of Tennessee Constitution. And the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, each of us take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Tennessee. So the town of Farragut is granted the powers of local planning and land use by the state constitution and state laws. So we've adopted zoning ordinances and subdivision regulations and architectural design guidelines and comprehensive land use plan, and we enforce building codes. But these powers to exert influence over the use of private property is constrained by the constitutional principles of due process and taking clause in the constitutions. So our municipal government has to provide a consistent, reasoned, and timely process through which property owners can exercise their rights to reasonable use of their property. And reasonable use of private property is defined at the very least by how a property is currently zoned or how it is envisioned to be used as shown in the comprehensive land use plan. Property owners have a right to exercise their property rights at their own discretion and on their own time frame. We as a town cannot control the pace at which property is developed. To be clear, we cannot delay the process either, even for COVID. Governor Lee has provided guidance through his executive orders on how local governments can continue to conduct government business in a pandemic. So I apologize for having to review that, but I think that it's important. And I think that message gets lost a lot for our citizens. The comprehensive land use plan As quoted in the plan is the community's long-range overarching plan that steers the town into the future and provides specific policies and actions that can help achieve the plan. It was approved in December 2012 after several months of public engagement and input to prepare the plan, and it still remains incredibly relevant today. And the town planning commission and the board of mayor and aldermen rely heavily on it when we're making land use decisions. It's broken up into chapters to deal with our challenges. It points out the 8 key strategies to address those challenges. It introduces our future land use map and outlines future land use concepts and land use designations. It dives into specific areas of town and some implementation tools. The comprehensive land use plan can be found on the website, and I really encourage residents who are interested to review that plan and get very familiar with it. With regard to the current land use amendment and PCD zoning district that we're talking about today, the vision is to, or what the Planning Commission is recommending to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to adopt is allowing for the PCD to extend down. Of course, the land use plan has to match that so that we have greater control over the remaining portion of this property that was originally designated medium density. This way we can have a cohesive and complementary development for the entirety of it. If there's any changes to the concept plan, the developer has to come back to the Planning Commission to address those and get approval for them separately from this current approval. So moving on to mixed use, because I think that a lot of, I'm not sure if many of our residents really understand the history. We've heard a lot about Market Square type development. So in the early 2000s, the town began exploring the idea of a downtown. And in 2007, the Town Center District zoning ordinance was adopted to accommodate a mixed-use town center project that had been proposed for the Ford property. That project included 250 multi-family units, 184,000 square feet of retail space, and 140,000 square feet of office space on 27 acres. A downturn in the economy prevented the developer from moving forward with rezoning and the project. And although he had many concerted efforts to market this project after the economy recovered, no developers have been interested. The inherent challenges with building a walkable mixed-use town center project in a suburban community, it has to do with the need for street presence and visibility to attract people traveling in vehicles. A pedestrian-oriented town center in the suburbs needs to be located away from the main arterials, which tend to carry high volumes of fast-moving vehicles. For a development like this to succeed in the suburbs, it needs a substantial built-in residential component to provide the pedestrian and consumer base needed for the commercial component to thrive. That is why apartments have always been a part of an overall mixed-use town center plan. I will state that Placemakers, which is a blog, talks about the evolution of mixed-use developments, and they've managed to categorize them into vertical mixed-use development, horizontal mixed-use development, and mixed-use walkable areas. So we're seeing a variety of that all over the country. People are looking to implement mixed-use development into their towns to make them more walkable and pedestrian-oriented. So I'm going to discuss the things that I've kind of culled together from the Farragut Town Center at Biddle Farm through our many discussions at the Planning Commission level and at the staff developer meetings. The Farragut Town Center at Biddle Farm is a mixed-use development where commercial, residential, and community open space are integrated and built in such a way as to prioritize pedestrian activity and community over vehicular activity. It is an integrated mixed-use development in a horizontal form. Given the fact that we do live in the suburbs and we do have to accommodate vehicles via parking lots, a horizontal development is more suitable. It allows for the parking to be spread out and for residents to have their own parking, which is a desirable aspect of apartment living in the suburbs. This development utilizes many of the principles necessary to promote walkability and community building. The main street is very inviting for the pedestrian with wide sidewalks and buildings set at the edge of the sidewalk. There is room for outside dining and socializing with the integrated residential component. There is a built-in customer base at the density that brings life to our sidewalks. The style and form of this development has a high-end feeling. The intent is to attract higher-end stores, small business-owned boutiques and shops, coffee shops, perhaps a bookstore, and maybe even an art gallery, which would not necessarily happen in a traditional car-centric retail shopping area. The main street extends to a town square lawn, which is framed on one side by shops and the other side by a multifamily building. This gives walls to the space for a sense of definition for people. The opportunities for how this town square will be utilized are limitless. We can close off the streets for a community festival, or perhaps we can finally have that Christmas parade we've longed for. Certainly for an open space for families, friends to congregate. An additional community space is the walking trail alongside Turkey Creek. This is a natural amenity which is showcased and integrated into this development. The natural open space in this development is approximately 14 acres. Even the existing Biddle horse farm becomes an amenity for this development. Parking is provided so residents not fortunate enough to live in this community can enjoy this space as well. The high-density residential aspect of this mixed-use development is designed in such a way as to shield most of the residents' parking lots from visitors' view, which provides for a more aesthetically pleasing appearance. Additionally, the form of the family buildings is balanced by the big box grocery Kroger building. This development fully capitalizes on the natural amenities available to it, unlike the Kroger Greenway, which seems to be more like an afterthought. The proposed commercial district is part of a much broader shopping district which the residents have easy access to, including the shops in the Brooklawn Village and West End. With the completion of the capital project to build a walkway under Kingston Pike at the bridge between Campbell Station Road and Brooklawn Street, the residents will have safe access to the new brew pub at Admiral's Corner, as well as access to any community events being held at the Campbell Station Inn Plaza. Additionally, there are existing undeveloped or underdeveloped parcels around this development that can develop incrementally over time residentially and commercially, thereby providing for a more authentic environment which will be unique to Farragut. Many mixed-use town center developments in the suburbs end up being disconnected from the existing residential neighborhoods because of a lack of pedestrian connections. The town of Farragut's investment over the last quarter of a century provides for a sidewalk greenway system ready to be tapped into. This mixed-use development will be accessible by bike or walking by many residents living in the following neighborhoods: Concord Hills, Thornton Heights, Farragut View, Woodland Trace, Sweetbriar, Cottage Creek, and the Cove at Turkey Creek, as well as the residents on Concord Road. One final note about this project: while surrounding current residents in Thornton Heights and Concord Hills and on Concord Road did not move here for the walkable nature of this area, their property values will only increase. People are looking for walkable communities with vibrant, active town centers. This development will be sellable, marketable asset for those existing residents living in a walkable distance from it. This mixed-use development is key to establishing a walkable environment in our town center and building a stronger, more vibrant community. Establishing great places cannot be accomplished utilizing outdated suburban development philosophies. And finally, I wanted to deal with some of the major issues that we've heard people were concerned about. Allison, can you go to the first one, the traffic? Next one. I didn't know after that. I'm looking for the tables. Okay, so this is table 5. You know what? Go to the next one first, table 6. Table 6 shows the comparison between how, if this property is zoned C1, they have a right to build it out as C1. If they built out in that zone, the current zoning district, it would generate about 10,000. Well, it says 10,037 daily trips. The proposed development with the mixed use, the multifamily and the commercial, generates about 6,733 trips. So just in this proposed development, you're reducing the trips that are going to be generated from what it would be if built out as it's currently zoned. And it will build out. It may not build out all at the same time, but that property will build out, and a mixed-use town center, as opposed to a car-centric commercial development. The mixed-use town center is going to, this project is going to further our goals that a traditionally car-centric suburban shopping center will not. So can you go back to table 5? I wanted to point out that of how the traffic breaks down, the residential portion of it is only a third of the total trips. The commercial portion is, and that's the portion that people don't seem to be too offended by, is what's generating most of the traffic, certainly 2/3 of the traffic in this particular project. So if you're looking at just from a traffic generation aspect, this project is certainly more beneficial than if it builds out full-on commercial as it's currently zoned. The next, go ahead, go to the next one about the student yield. These are updated student yield calculations for Knox County. Farragut is included in their Southwest sector. Knox County planning staff update these numbers about every 5 years, I'm told. They updated these in late 2019, early 2020. They indicate that they do not, student yield coming out of market rate apartments is very low. If you look at those calculations, it's going to yield about, I think I said 6 or 7 students per school. So not a big yield for what we're getting for as far as what we're trying, the problems we're trying to resolve with the empty big box and trying to establish a mixed use town center. The last point that people were making is with regard to the fact that there's a floodplain here. The town of Farragut has adopted the Farragut Municipal Flood Damage Prevention Regulations that meet or exceed FEMA's requirements. We are required to adopt and follow these regulations to maintain the town's eligibility in the National Flood Insurance Program. So we are not interested in losing our ability to participate in that program. I know that Bud and his group are working directly with FEMA to in regard to the reconstruction of the bridge and access street to Concord Road and its impact on the floodplain. So those were the major issues I've heard the most about that people were concerned about. And I'm going to close my thoughts with this. The mixed-use town center is something the community has asked for. When we've done some updated strategic plans, when we've done some other things where we needed to poll the residents, it still comes up as something that they wanted to see. No project is going to be perfect. No mixed-use project is going to be perfect, particularly in the suburbs, because we are car-centric and we like our cars and we're going to remain car-centric. So how do we mix the two? How do we make sure that we're trying to make our community more vibrant, walkable, and a desirable place to live for years to come, but also accommodate the fact that we like our cars and we're going to continue to be car-centric in our general lifestyle. Some people are looking for the walkable lifestyle, but a lot of us aren't. This, I believe, in this location is the catalyst for starting a mixed-use town center. I think it's the densest part of it. We have some outlying lots and a lot of open, undeveloped land that could develop in a very walkable manner, but more befitting what people are concerned about, maybe townhomes. And certainly on the other side of Campbell Station Road, there's a large portion of the property that's owned by the Biddles that could be single-family residential. So this is, to me, an opportunity to begin a town center that will grow over the years. I think that this is a good project. They've worked through a lot of issues and they've brought to us something that is going to be a community gathering location, and I certainly support it. So that's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Pavlin. Next, I'll move on to Alderman Burnett for his comments and questions. Alderman Burnett. Okay, he's not available right this, so we'll move on to Alderman
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this time, and I'll try to keep my comments brief. I do want to use this time to address comments as well as my vision for the town center. But before I make my comments, I want to issue a number of thank yous. I would definitely want to thank the Biddle family and Bud in particular for your hard work and your willingness to incorporate input from our committees, from our residents, from our town staff. As a developer, you don't necessarily have to do all that. And I think because you have been over backwards for us, it makes you a very credible partner in this endeavor. And so thank you for being willing to incorporate our input. I want to thank the staff and our planning commission who have poured over details, who have listened to resident comments ad nauseum, and who have done an exorbitant amount of research in order to get us to where we are today. We would not be here tonight without their hard work. So thank you, staff and planning commission members. Most importantly is, in my heart, I want to thank Mayor Williams and Vice Mayor Povlin for being the lightning rods when it comes to this particular project. And I have to comment, I'm extraordinarily impressed and moved over the past months, where I have seen time after time after time the vice mayor and the mayor responding to residents' comments who are not always pleasant, actually. And yet both the mayor and vice mayor have always responded in a professional manner that should make all of Farragut residents proud. And they've responded in a succinct tone. They were never snotty back to people. And you really both have set an example of servant leadership for me, and I just want to thank you for that. Moving on to my comments, and I'm going to make all my comments now so that way I don't have to comment on the other items tonight on the agenda. But I want to address a number of the comments, especially the one from Ashley Hurley tonight, where she had really shared her heart in feeling that Louise and I maybe did not have her best interest at heart. And I also want to address the traffic, which I know Louise, you've done already. But I do think, Ashley, with all due respect, that I do have your best interest at heart, and here's why. At the end of the day, as the vice mayor has pointed out, this property is currently zoned commercial, which means the Biddle family could, after jumping through some hoops, could go ahead and put on that property a Lowe's, and there's really nothing we could do, or some kind of big box store. And as been pointed out tonight through the vice mayor's comments and through Bud's comments, if we had 100% commercial activity on this property, the traffic is going to be higher. The volume of traffic is going to be higher than the volume of traffic if this development would be partial residential, partial commercial. Now, right now, unless the horses or the cows learn how to drive, there is no traffic impact because of the farm. But I think we all need to come to the realization as parts of a dynamic community and as neighbors and as friends that whatever development happens on this property, there will be an impact to traffic. And so, in my opinion, this particular proposal minimizes that impact as much as possible. And that's why I wanted to thank all the folks involved tonight. So I hope, Ashley, I will be able to address some more about why I think I have your best interest at heart here in just a moment. I do want to move on to the fact that I completely support this project. It checks all the boxes for me, and you'll have my full support. I do have a concern, though, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. And my concern is the aesthetics or the facades of the buildings. And I believe that the town center buildings should tie into or complement the colonial features that we see currently in the Campbell Station Inn. And here's why. Because when I look at the Campbell Station Inn, I don't see just a renovated building on the corner of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike, but rather I see an icon that symbolizes the virtues on which Farragut was founded. When I look at the Campbell Station Inn, I'm reminded that although our hometown is very young, and I believe 40 years old is very young from my perspective, although the town is young, the virtues that make us distinctly Farragut have been demonstrated by generations that have come before us. Whether it's the virtue of determination and hard work that's been demonstrated by the stagecoach drivers who used to work as hard as they could to get the passengers to the inn, or the farmers or the quarry workers who showed us the virtue of hard work, whether it is the courage and the sacrifice demonstrated by the Civil War soldiers in the Battle of Campbell Station, who loved their country so much and their ideas, they were willing to sacrifice everything for those ideas, to the virtues of innovation and drive, which I believe was demonstrated by our town's founders back in the late 70s when they would sit around the kitchen table at night, sipping a cocktail rather, in their bell bottoms, in their poofy hair, and their crew cuts, and dreaming of raising their children in a town that would not be subject to good old boy network of Knox County, which is very much still alive today. So therefore, and Brad, I'm glad you're the architects listening. This is why it's so important for me, and I believe for the town of Farragut. I truly believe that because of the heritage of these virtues that are completely symbolized by the Campbell Station Inn, which, by the way, I did not support the renovation of the Campbell Station Inn as a private citizen. But now that it's been renovated, it is certainly an icon and a beacon and a symbol of our virtues. And I think those virtues and that heritage virtues should be celebrated in a town center that also symbolizes those virtues. And Allison, I don't know if you have the slides available or not, but I've been working in Richmond, Virginia quite a bit the last couple weeks with a client. And I wanted to share with everyone some slides from a town center that I believe will be very similar to what I believe Bud is trying to build. And it also reflects the idea of the town center tying into some buildings such as the Campbell Station Inn. So Allison, if you'd pull up the picture of the Starbucks and the Joseph Banks. You all know where I spend most of my time when I'm on the road. But you'll see on that picture, if you have it up, Allison.
I have the Joseph A. Banks one up right now.
Perfect. Okay. So this town center is in a part of Richmond called Short Pump. It's about a mile to 2 square miles roughly. And the perimeter of this town center in Short Pump, SHORTPUMP, Virginia, the perimeter of it is commercial and it's horizontal. And if you notice, the roof line is a pitched tin roof, which is actually similar to the Campbell Station Inn. And what's interesting, or what really stood out to me about this roof line and all the commercial that had similar roof lines, is that the buildings beyond the town center also had tin roofs. Now, they were different colors. There was some that were navy blue. There was some that was dark green. But there was a tie-in at the perimeter of the town center to the rest of the community. So the perimeter of the town center was commercial. Then if you'll go to the next slides, if you pull up some of the townhomes. Allison, there you have a second, and the townhomes look like a townhome. And if you let me know when you have it pulled up, because
it's up. I got it up.
Okay, perfect. So as you move into the town center, once you get past the commercial, there are these townhomes. And those of you who are familiar with Richmond, Virginia, and I'm sure, Mr. Mayor, you are, because you lived out in I think, Newport News not too long ago. Richmond, Virginia has a very much of a colonial history. And so these townhomes were built to celebrate that history. And you'll see they're very unique, and they're distinguished between front doors and porches and bricks. Allison, if you'll go to the apartments next. And again, this is showing the tying in of these themes. And let me know when you have the apartments up. I flooded David and Allison with so many pictures today. I'm not sure. Probably confused you.
Okay, Scott, it's up.
Perfect, thank you. So what I find interesting about the apartments, which are in the exact center of the town center, is that if you look at them, they're 5 stories and there's retail on the bottom, and we'll address that here in a second. But you'll see vertically there are different sections along the apartments that are distinguished based on building materials or colors of brick or whatnot, and that vertical distinguishment or vertical sections mirror the distinguishments of the townhomes. And so I spent a lot of time walking around this town center in between doing journal entries and closing financial statements. And I do want to make one final comment about my time walking around. I know Michael Mitchell loves to post not statistically significant surveys on Nextdoor. So I wanted to do my own statistically not significant survey. And what I did is I went into 8 establishments. I went to a Mexican restaurant that was owned by American immigrants. It was not a chain. They had the best goat cheese queso known to mankind. I went into a wine bar. I went into a sandwich shop, all owned by local businesses. I did go to Starbucks. The picture kind of tells on me. I did go to Joseph Banks. I went to an Indian restaurant, and then I went to a First Watch. And I actually asked the folks that were in those establishments, where do you live? And 80% lived in the apartments and the townhomes that you just saw pictures of. And of that population, 95% walked there. When I asked them, when you all grow up someday, because they were mostly youngins, and you want to buy a house, do you think that you might buy in this area? 93% of the people I spoke to said yes. And it's because of the schools, it's because of the location of the town center, and it's because of the property values, which I think sounds very familiar and could be very reflective of the town of Farragut. So I support this project. I applaud everyone who's been involved in it. Your blood, sweat, and tears are so much appreciated. And I look forward to seeing this project come to fruition with the one caveat that the aesthetics or the facades need to celebrate the virtues that are symbolized by the Campbell Station Inn. And they all need to be tied in, as I explained and showed with those pictures. It will be difficult, Bud, honestly, for me to support this project if I don't see that kind of tie-in. Right now, the apartments, as I've seen pictured in the plan that you have, are very modern and they don't really tie in. And I don't think the town of Farragut wants to see something like that as we drive to work every day. I do think that some kind of colonial celebration of the Campbell Station Inn and trying to carry that theme all through the town as much as possible is going to make it a much more attractive location. So I hope Ashley Hurley heard that at the end of the day, with this town center, there's all these benefits coming that the vice mayor's mentioned. In addition to, I would say that it's a wonderful draw to bring young folks in, professionals in, who will eventually buy our homes someday so that we can retire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Meyer. I thought that I was young at 40 years as well, so let's see. Let me go back to Alderman Barnett if he's available.
Thank you, Mayor. I am. I apologize for the technical issues there. You know, for me, this is a very emotional group of ordinances that we're discussing tonight. As many know, I was born here and chose to raise my family here and just take great pride in the town. I do want to be very transparent on our discussions tonight that, you know, my personal opinion is I would love to see the Biddle farm stay a farm. You know, I have great memories of driving by the farm, seeing the horses in the open fields. I've got great memories a long, long time ago of a rodeo that'd come once a year, and as a young boy being at that rodeo. So there's a lot of great memories there for me. And for me, open farmland brings a sense of peace and calm that, you know, can't be replaced by other forms of development. But, you know, with that being said, the options in front of us, which is what we're to deal with, they are not A, leave it a farm, or B, have a town center. You know, we don't have the money to buy that land. I wish we did, to keep it a farm. And to date, no one stepped up and is willing to fork over that money to keep it a farm as well. So, you know, our options are to allow the Biddle farm to be developed as it's currently zoned, which is mostly commercial with some single family residential. And we've talked about, Vice Mayor Pavlin alluded to the traffic study that shows what types of traffic counts that would bring, or to change the zoning to PCD, where there's a mix of uses that provide a consistent development that meets, 6 out of 8 goals that we establish in our land use plan. So, for me, concerning amending the future land use map, the majority of this Biddle farmland is currently mixed use town center, and to me it makes sense for the remaining land to have the same land use designation. I think it will bring a more cohesive look to the area, and as alluded to multiple times, it meets 6 out of 8 of our strategies put forth by the comprehensive land use plan. So for 21-01, that's my feedback and thoughts.
Okay, sir. Thank you, Alderman Burnett. I can remember that rodeo as well. I was quite a bit older than you whenever that took place, but I remember it. We'll move on now to Alderman Pinchot.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, a lot of the things that Alderman Pavlin and Alderman Myers have said were things that I was going to address, but I'll try to keep this brief without going over a lot of the same things. I want to start by saying I've lived here for over 30 years. I've been on the board for almost 7 years, and prior to that, Economic Development Council for 2 years. And for that period of time, those 9 years, one of the major goals that I had and the town had was to try to create a mixed-use town center. And I didn't think I'd ever see it in my lifetime, but here we are. It's something that's eluded us for years to find someone to take on this project, and Bud is willing to do it. He grew up in our school system and familiar with the area. And from the beginning, I really liked his ideas, especially with the commercial area. I've got to thank him for listening to our suggestions and all the changes he made with widening the sidewalks and the angle parking and changing the fountain to the lawn and so forth. It was a 1-story complex, and we wanted him to consider 2 stories, and he was able to work that out. So he has made a lot of concessions, and he has been willing to work with us on all those things. I guess my biggest concern was to get rid of that old Kroger building. We got rid of the old service station on the corner of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike, and we bought the Campbell Station in and created a Mayor McGill Plaza there, and that intersection looks great. And this is, I think, going to be a great project in addition to that. I struggled. I've listened to our citizens. I struggled with the school issues, the traffic issues, but I've spent time with Daryl Smith, our town engineer, on the traffic study. I feel comfortable with that. I feel comfortable with the school issues. People are concerned about a lot of dirt having to come in, but no matter what is done with that property, there's going to be dirt that's going to be needed to brought in. So I feel comfortable with all of those things that have been brought up as far as issues. My biggest concern was the apartments. And I was so, I guess I felt so strongly about the fact that there were a lot of people that came to me saying they wanted to take ownership in this project. They wanted to buy, not rent. Now, Bud's made it, some comments that there's still a lot of people that young people, professional people, and senior people that are willing to rent, and that's great. And I hope that's the case. But I was the one that suggested to Bud to try to come up with some condos or townhomes, and he tells me he is going to work on that, and I'm going to hold him to that. I really want to see some type of residential project that people can buy into. So I'm supporting this project. I've struggled with a lot of things, but I've worked through everything. Bud has been willing to meet with me and talk with me. Again, this has been going on for 12 months. And I think a lot of people that have written in, just gotten kind of hearing the information and gotten involved in the last few weeks or last few months when this project, Bud's gotten with us for the last 12 months, and staff has done a wonderful job working with them. And again, Bud has listened to all of us, staff, the planning commission, and the board members. And again, he's been willing to compromise on a lot of things. So I really want to thank him for that. I think one of the biggest things that is going to be a challenge is again, getting the right tenants for this commercial area. And he said he's got some good restaurants that he's working on, but I think that's the key, because I think our citizens want a place to gather, to be entertained. And I think the lawn and the tenants that he brings in are going to be the key. So, Bud, I support you. I'm going to hold you to the condos or townhomes and so forth, but I would like to see that done. But thank you for your efforts. I think you got a good project. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Alderman, for those kind words, and definitely hold me to that.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Pinchuk. Okay, I'm last on the list. I guess what I want to say is our comprehensive land use plan, our subdivision regulations, our zoning, our ordinances, architectural design standards, they're what guide the commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That's what we rely on. This was all put forth prior to any being on any of these committees or boards, and with every project that's brought to us, it just starts with a clean sheet of paper, and like this project did. And after almost a year now, and after almost 20 meetings, we're at a point that we can vote on the zoning that best fits this property. And I think first off, we've got to do is this particular ordinance here is to amend the future land use map and the comprehensive land use plan. Like I said, it's one of the items that we use decision. And so with that said, I'm gonna, and with the motion it's been seconded on the floor, I'll now ask for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, absolutely yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Alderman Pavlin.
Alderman Pavlin, yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show that ordinance 21-01 has been approved on the first reading by unanimous vote. In that ordinance 21-02, an ordinance to amend the Farragut zoning map in association with the Farragut Town Center at Biddle Farms project, 11-230 and 11-240 Kingston Pike, and 1-3 Concord Road, parcels 3.02, 3.03, 3.10, and a portion of 3.19 that's located on tax map 143. This will be from general commercial C1 and general single residential R2 to planned commercial development that we call PCD, 43.63 acres, Bud Cullum applicant.
Yes, I'll review this item, obviously related to the previous item. This one, Allison, if you could go to the zoning map. First, the ordinance amended the future land use map and the comprehensive land use plan, and this one is the zoning map that relates to the zoning ordinance. On the screen, you can kind of see that the outline of the red is the part of the project that is proposed to be changed on the zoning map. There's a small section of brown that goes into this development that you can see there that kind of protrudes across Brookline on the east side of Brookline. But as has been stated during this meeting, most of the existing property is zoned C1, general commercial. There is a section to the south where there's really not any buildings that are part of this development that are proposed. It's currently zoned R2, which is general single family residential. So they're requesting, because this is a planned commercial development project, they're requesting to rezone the entire project to PCD. if you could go to the next slide, it would show, yeah, that all the brown area would be the PCD. Now, as has been mentioned before, this project has kind of been going on for about a year. And initially, it didn't start out as a planned commercial development project. It did start out with a concept and working with the staff and the planning commission and board members and the land use planning steering committee. And basically, we kind of went round and round and came to the realization that based on the characteristics of the project and the fact that they'd already pretty much master planned it, it seemed like the planned commercial development zoning district overlay would be the most appropriate for this project. So that's kind of how it came about. The planned commercial development district, when you rezone to that district, it's one of only a couple of districts in our zoning ordinance where you have to have a concept master plan, and you really have to do quite a bit of background work and provide a lot of information as part of the rezoning itself before you even get to a site plan review. So basically at the August 20 Planning Commission meeting, we received feedback from the Planning Commission that they felt as well that the planned commercial development was the best zoning district for this property and this development. And basically since that time, the applicant had been working on putting together all the information. You have to go through and provide a narrative, your goals, your objectives of the project, because it's one unified development. It's not like most developments that you see. They're kind of a fragmented, disjointed project. This is all one cohesive development. It has different uses that we talked about earlier that are horizontally laid out. They're not in the same building vertically, but they are horizontal, but the project is integrated. It's not like your normal multifamily development, because most multifamily developments that I'm familiar with, basically they kind of barricade themselves and gate themselves off from what's around them. And, when that idea came up with the staff and the planning commission, I mean, that's the exact opposite of what we want to be happening in this kind of development. We want the residential component, whatever it is, whether it's multifamily, townhouses, rented, owned, to be part of the whole project and integrated with it, so that it is a horizontal mixed-use development. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into requesting a rezoning for PCD. I think the applicant has provided that information. In addition to that, as been mentioned earlier, the traffic impact study, there was a very thorough traffic impact study prepared, and we even had a third-party review of the study from the town. So basically at this point, what they're requesting with this ordinance is to change the zoning map to the planned commercial development to reflect the fact that it is a development, a one entity development that's being developed as one planned commercial unit. And this was, when this was presented to the Planning Commission at their meeting on November 19th, they did recommend approval of this ordinance, and staff recommends approval as well on first reading, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
I'm going to move to approve.
Alderman Burnett, I'll second.
Okay.
I apologize. That was Alderman Povlin that moved to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I guess now we're ready to hear if there's any citizens' questions or comments on this particular ordinance here, the ordinance 21-02.
Yes, sir. We do have a couple of comments tonight. The first one's Mike Mitchell at 716 Brooksworth Boulevard. The changes to this portion of the C1 zoning ordinance will apply to all parcels in the town center area, not just the Biddle Farm. This includes the historic plaza, West End, Municipal Center Drive, and the Brooklyn areas found in the expanded implementation tools of the comprehensive land use plan. If these changes are approved, any developer or redevelopment in these areas would be open to potentially high-density residential style buildings with ground floor units. This style of horizontal development is not consistent with the renderings for all of these areas as seen in the expanded implementation tool portion of the plan. This seemingly change could potentially alter the feel of the entire town center, turning it into an urban type development. This constitutes a significant change to the town center vision and character laid out in 2012. It is understandable that this original vision may no longer be viable. As was stated in previous town meetings, town leaders attended a developers conference and learned that such a development would need to be multiple stories high with a parking garage. Understanding the entire town center must change, the town had an obligation to conduct a significant public outreach called for on page 6 of the plan. This would have allowed the town, local developers, landowners, and citizens to discuss the appropriate changes based on the current attitudes. This proposed change to the C1 zoning ordinance is the last step that will seal the fate of the town center by altering the original vision based solely on the feedback and input of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission. While I understand the desire to redevelop the old Kroger building, changing the entire town center to accomplish this task is not worth the future risk. I ask that you deny this request and conduct a public outreach to pave a collaborative new path forward for our town center. The next one is Teresa Barn at 347 Barnsley Road. We recently moved to Farragut in November of 2019. What drew us to the area was the small town atmosphere with many different small subdivisions. The traffic has already increased since we moved here, and with the new zoning request, it would be even worse. In addition, my daughter is a teacher at North Shore, and that school, as well as Farragut, are already busting at the seams. I do not want these rezoning changes to pass, and I believe the citizens of the community should have a say. The next one, Michael Wilson at 412 Eisenhower Street. The rezoning request directly contradicts the requirements in the application for rezoning to Planned Commercial Development District, PCD. The PCD paragraph D2A specifically it states, quote, "This statement shall indicate how the PCD district will be consistent with the Farragut Comprehensive Land Use Plan update, pedestrian and bicycle plan, and all other adopted plans and ordinances of the town of Farragut and any subsequent amendments. The fact that there are proposed changes to the text of the PCD zoning district in the next agenda item is a clear indication that this application is not consistent with the adopted plans and ordinances. As well, the concept master plan section of the PCD zoning district states that the master plan shall demonstrate compliance with the objectives of this district. PCD object number 6 requires that the master plan be consistent with all adopted plans and ordinances of the town. The PCD district permits residential use, and the mixed-use town center provides it complies with Chapter 3, Section 7, Paragraph F of the zoning ordinance. Subparagraph M allows for residential provided located in upper stories. The provided renderings and buildings footprint shows apartments located in the first floor, which is inconsistent with the current zoning ordinance requirements for the mixed-use town center. By voting on this request, it would appear that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have already decided on Ordinance 2103 before a public hearing and vote has been held on it. I ask that you table this item until after 2103 completes the public hearing process and either approve or denied. Only then will the citizens have an opportunity to legitimately comment on the context of the zoning request. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next one is Dave Sandoval at 417 Farragut Road. I'm writing to you with concerns about the development proposal for the Biddle property. As proposed, this development deviates from the concept of a Farragut Market Square. The concept of retail on the first floor with residential above has been changed to separate standalone multi-story apartments. This was done without adequate public input and discussion. A number of social media posts and recent letters to this board have objected to this development. The issues of traffic, school overcrowding, and flooding have all been voiced, and I agree with these objections. More outreach to the public needs to be done. In the time of COVID, options are limited, but we still need to discuss the changes to the zoning of this project. As a licensed general contractor, I understand the need for development and planning. The owners have the right to develop their property. I also understand that the impact of any development can have positive and negative effects on the surrounding community. The public also has a right to have their voices heard. When a project in Knox County along Concord Road was up for rezoning, the board opposed it and voiced their objections to the Knox County Planning Commission. I would hope the board would take the Biddle property objections into debate before rendering a decision. Thank you for your time. Terry and Bruce Savage at 417 Cutlass. I'm writing to express my family's objections to your recent actions concerning the rezoning of the Biddle Farm to include apartments. We lack the infrastructure to support a sudden influx of 400 families, especially with concerning traffic and the overcrowding of Farragut schools. We live in Concord Hills, which has only one entry, that is on Concord Road. Traffic on Concord Road is already terrible during the morning and afternoon rush hours, not to mention Kingston Pike and Campbell Station. Surely you're aware of a huge opposition of the addition of apartments to this project. If not, join your fellow citizens on Nextdoor and other social media, or better yet, put this project on hold until we can voice our opinion at a town meeting. Hiding behind the restrictions of COVID to push this development through is being noticed. We ask that you listen to concerns of the Farragut residents and develop a new CLUP based on current information. We respect your willingness to serve, but feel the service includes listening and reevaluating when necessary. Doug and Chesney Anderson at 12109 North Fox Den. I'm writing to express my disapproval of using the land parcels at 11230 and 11240 Kingston Pike and 133 Concord Road for single-family residential and commercial spaces. I've lived in Farragut for 29 years, since age 5, and have chosen to raise my family here in Fox Den. We chose Farragut for its small rural feel and disheartened in the overdevelopment we are seeing. Please vote against this new development on Thursday. Next one is Jeannie Bergowski at 329 Crestview. As longtime Farragut residents, my husband and I oppose the 3 rezoning amendments, which will allow many hundreds of apartments to be added to the heart of Farragut, where a Market Square style attraction was to be built. This decision cannot and should not be without significant public outreach. We have over 23,000 residents in Farragut, and the majority of us were never contacted for our opinions, suggestions, or feedback on this far-reaching project. The town of Farragut is supposed to be a democracy, one that serves the will and needs of the people, all the people. It is time personal feelings and agendas be put aside, and what is best for the residents of Farragut to be put first and foremost. Please vote no on these amendments. Next one is Tiffany Vanzo at 11329 Woodcliff Drive. I'm writing to ask the town officials to please reconsider voting to move forward on building apartments on the Biddle property. The citizens of this town are against this and with meetings being virtual, have had no chance to adequately express their opposition. It also seems to be being pushed forward very quickly and is not with the original description of a town center that was described. This property sits in a very busy area near 3 schools. Traffic is already an issue. It also borders a beautiful and historic cemetery. Building multi-story apartments a stone's throw away would destroy the view, peaceful resting, and mourning place for many families. When the idea of a town center was proposed, I was in favor. But to me, a town center is a small grouping of one-story businesses and restaurants surrounding a large green space that can be used for town events, concerts, and outdoor functions. The people in Farragut envisioned another park-like setting like the library, surrounded by coffee shops and local retail, and we are being forced to accept a completely different plan of an apartment complex. Apartments do not stay luxury forever, and I'm afraid the town will regret placing them in front and center. There are plans to build apartments at other locations in town which make way much more sense than the beautiful location. Traffic and location this close to schools alone should be an adequate automatic disqualification. People move to Farragut because of the mix of beautiful homes and green space. If you start building up against the town's wishes, You will chase out the very people who move here because Farragut is such a great place to live. Decisions like this will turn Farragut into Cedar Bluff. Please reconsider and do further outreach to the citizens of Farragut. This is not an acceptable town center. And that concludes our comments for 2102.
Mayor, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. At this point, I'll ask the applicant if he has anything he needs to add or to maybe some answers to some of the questions that was posed during this concerning the ordinance to amend the Farragut zoning map.
Thank you, Mayor. It's Bud Cullum again. I really, most of the comments were echoes of the previous comments. I think I have addressed most of them. I want to reiterate again that it's interesting to note that a lot of these residents have said that they want a market square type quote unquote attraction. Or they want to go back to the vertical mixed use town center. And they use then as their arguments against this development predominantly the traffic and school and congestion. And I don't understand how you can have a market square type attraction that probably has on the order of 1,000 apartment units within walking distance, or how you can have a vertical mixed-use town center with apartments that will not cause congestion, school overcrowding, or in general traffic problems. So I'm not trying to be flippant, but at the same time, the fact of the matter is what we're creating is giving people a town center. It's giving a walkable place with a town square and the type of smaller shops and restaurants that people can utilize along with a town square and a more vibrant walkable community. And I realize I said the same thing earlier, but since these are new issues, I wanted to at least address them from that standpoint.
Okay, sir. Thank you for your thoughts, and also I want to thank our citizens again for their interest in sending in their comments. Okay, we'll move on to the board discussion now, and we'll start again with Vice Mayor Pavlin.
I'm just going to keep it brief. I know that there's a lot of people are kind of stuck on this vertical mixed use. Like I said before, there is no ideal way to do a mixed use project in the suburbs because you have to still accommodate for vehicles. When you build in a vertical manner, you've got to accommodate all the parking right by the building. So you're accommodating both the commercial use of it or retail use of it, as well as the residential use of it. And what you end up with are very large parking fields that people have to kind of traverse to get to the walkable shopping area. In the suburbs, you're taking up so much of that space is taken up on parking that you end up with a pretty one-dimensional feeling, and it doesn't feel very pedestrian friendly as you're walking through the massive parking lot. So that's the kind of the yin and the yang of all of this is, and so the horizontal, you can spread it out, and the apartments have their own private parking, which is what most people living in the suburbs in apartments want. They don't want to share their parking with the commercial or retailer. So what he's managed to do is provide to us a smaller, more compact attractive shopping area. And then what we have more is a separation of uses instead of the vertical use. And I would contend to you, a lot of people are saying that this separation of uses is very urban, and it's the exact opposite. When you're putting commercial on the main and residential above, that is quintessentially urban. You are situated next to a quintessentially suburban grocery, big box grocery store complex. So that, I guess that's the difference. PCD, extending PCD all the way back makes a lot of sense. They have to, anytime they come to if they want to add something, they have to go through an approval process to amend the concept plan. And of course, with it being PCD, we get a little bit more particular about how those things happen. So I think it's a good idea then you end up with a more consistent and cohesive look across the entire project. So I certainly approve this change to PCD.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. We'll move on to, let's go to Alderman Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one observation I wanted to run by Bud. The pictures I showed earlier of a town center, again, that are part of a township that is part of Richmond, Virginia. As everybody knows, Richmond, Virginia is about an hour and a half south of Washington, D.C., so it's a pretty large metro area. What I thought was interesting is as I walked around the town center, there were apartments that were 5 stories with the residential on the first floor. And then there were other apartments that did not have residential on the did not have commercial on the first floor. And what was interesting is those apartments that had the commercial on the first floor, there were built-in parking garages that were, the facade kind of looked like a continuation of the apartments. And the building was like just magnanimous. It just really kind of took over the whole view, where when I was looking at the apartments that did not have commercial on the first floor, they were more condensed. And obviously it was, 4 stories instead of 5 stories. And it made sense to me that, I guess because that town center was in more of an urban area than Knoxville / Farragut, I guess I could see the vertical. But I don't think that would really fit because for us in Farragut, simply because of the continuation of those parking garages, it just looked really, it was almost overwhelming. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Alderman Meyer, thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you have been able to visit firsthand and see existing product. I think you're spot on. I think the fact is that the town center at Short Pump in Richmond is it's in a much more urban type area, I think, than Farragut. I think the fact of what most people don't understand is when you do these parking garages, depending on exactly how it fits into the rest of the structure, they range anywhere from on the low side of 15 to 20,000 per parking space to a high side of 30 to 40,000 dollars per parking space. So you all of a sudden start realizing, in order to do that, you either have to get a very big density on the order of many, many hundreds, if not 1,000 units on an overall development that also may have, instead of 60,000 feet of retail, may have 160,000 feet of retail, along with hotels, freestanding restaurants, and office buildings as a part of it, just to make those numbers work. And if you did all of that, then you really would have traffic problems. You really may have school problems, and you really would be creating more of an urban environment, as to opposed to what we're trying to create is a small town feel of a downtown. And it's just like when I said the buildings on the multifamily part that's along the town square or the town green may not have commercial on the first floor, but if you just look at the building, The building itself is still a 4-story building that has that look and the feel, and you have people that are occupying and walking out and participating in the town square and participating in the shops and the restaurants. So the look is still there, and but it's horizontal, but it's compact, and that is what we think it will work here. It's what we think, frankly, from some of the trade journals I'm reading, is more of a wave of the future, and it's more compatible with suburban feel, which is what Farragut is. So again, I rambled on. Hopefully, I answered your question and echoed your same thoughts.
Great, thank you. And the other comment I have is, I forgot to mention this the first time, getting back to the sacrifice that the vice mayor and mayor have made for us on this particular project. I mentioned earlier about the virtues in which our town is founded, and I'm not blowing smoke about it. I truly believe that those virtues make Farragut the unique town that it is. And it is disheartening, it is asinine, it's grotesque that elected officials who are volunteers have to be concerned about their businesses being attacked on social media. And so I want to apologize to you, Vice Mayor Hovland. I am sorry that there are certain individuals in our town who are hell-bent on stirring fear, consternation, and confusion at the expense of your business. You don't deserve it. It's not called for. It is not appropriate. It is certainly not the way Farragut residents interact with each other and treat each other. And Mr. Mayor, the personal attacks on you, I'm sorry that's happened as well. You don't deserve it. You've worked very hard for us. And again, the way that you've been treated by certain individuals who continually spread misinformation is in my opinion, asinine. So thank you for both of you again overlooking that. Thank you for helping us steer the course in this project.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Meyer. Alderman Pinchot.
Yeah, I have two things that I'd like to say. First of all, I spent some time talking to Bud earlier today, and along the lines of what Alderman Meyer was talking about as far as the buildings, the look of the buildings, the architectural design of the buildings, and Bud said he is challenging his people to come up with maybe some changes along the lines of what I've discussed with him and along the lines with staff and Alderman Meyer. So he said that he might have some drawings, might have some information before the second reading that might reflect some of those changes and see what we think. So looking forward to seeing that, Bud. The second thing is that I was real adamant about no more apartments. And with this rezoning, with this amendment, I want to make sure on that southeast corner, the property there between the two detention ponds, that there will not be any more apartments built. So I had asked that a condition be put on this ordinance. I want to amend it. And Tom Hale had come up with a statement, and I'd like it to be read. Allison, do you have that? Or David, do you have the information would you like to read?
Maybe Mr. Hale can read.
Oh, he's here. Terrific.
Yeah, Alderman, Mr. Hale's here. If Tom's available to read it in the record, that may be best.
Sure. Yeah, I would just for a little background, I was asked to consider whether or not, if the town desired to do so, that it could impose a condition upon the effectiveness of the rezoning that would make it clear that there was a limitation on the amount of development of additional residential that could be placed on the undeveloped areas of the overall project. And so in light of that request, I've drafted some language that would I think, do that, and so I'll read it now. Consistent with the contents of Note 6 of CP-1 of the concept plan submitted by the applicant, and let me clarify that there's already some limitation in the concept plan along this line. So all we're doing is referencing consistent contents of Note 6 of sheet CP1 of the concept plan submitted by the applicant. A condition upon the approval of this rezoning imposed by the is that the proposed multi-story, multi-dwelling unit residential buildings represented and depicted on the concept plan shall be the only such similar residential buildings allowed to be constructed on the property subject to ordinance 20-02, including on the future development tracts 1 and 2, the development of which shall be limited to a density of no more than 4 dwelling units per acre, and the further condition that rezoning would not become effective until the foregoing restrictions upon the property being rezoned are memorialized by a restrictive covenant executed by the applicant that will run with the land, binding all future owners of such property.
Tom, this is Alderman Pinchuk. I believe instead of 2002, it should be 2102. Could we confirm that?
It's 2102. Okay. Yeah, that's the year, isn't it? I'm a year behind.
Okay, head in mind, Alderman Pinchuk.
Yes, it is. I'm hoping I can get to support the rest of the board to agree with this, but I think we've talked about no more apartments on this project, and with this, Bud would be allowed to at some point in time to build condos or townhomes, and so I'm in favor of this.
Does that mean, I think Alderman Pinchuk, you need to make an amended motion or an alternate motion? I'm not sure which one is which because I always get confused about that.
Good point. I'm not sure myself. I was thinking we just need to amend it, but David, can you help me?
Yes, Alderman, this is David Smoke. You can do one of two things. If whoever made the motion could amend their motion to include that last condition that was read in by Tom into the record, then
I think I made the motion.
Okay, then if you would amend it and whoever seconded it could second it, then that would be an amended motion on the floor.
Okay. Who did second it? Allison, do you know who seconded it?
It was Alderman Burnett.
I think Burnett did.
All right, so I'm going to amend my motion to include the restriction, the language that Tom Hale afforded to us. I'm leaving it at that.
This Alderman Burnett, I'll second.
Alderman Meyer, second.
Well, Drew has to second it, Alderman Meyer, so we don't have to go through all that again.
Oh.
Did
Do
you
I
hear me?
have to, or did Drew? Did Drew do it? Sorry.
He
Go ahead,
did.
Drew, in a second. Okay, sorry. I'll shut up.
Okay, then that's the case. We will vote on that when we get to it. We're not quite to it. I'm glad it's been made, but we still have to hear from Alderman Burnett and myself.
And me too. I'd like to speak to that.
Okay. Start off with Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think PCD, I like that it gives the board input on the design and flow of the development, as well as what was previously stated on input into the aesthetics of the development, which I think will be very handy. And that the new Kroger building is zoned adjacent to this property, PCD as well. I do think PCD is a good mixed use district that promotes a good, uniform, cohesive look. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, sir. That sounds real good. In my case, you've all pretty well covered it, and I appreciate the work with our attorney and Alderman Pinchuk on this amended part of the motion, and we need to go ahead and move on to the vote on that. And I'll ask the counter recorder to please.
Mayor Williams, can I quickly?
Can I?
I have one question.
I'm sorry about that, Mayor.
That's all right.
You're recognized.
Can we get? Can I get that language as quickly as possible? Maybe tomorrow or by Monday, Mr. Hale. Just because I'd like to review it and make sure I understand what it means and what the implications of it are. But certainly, tentatively, I'm certainly in approval of the concept of we don't need any more apartments on that. I agree with that feeling, that sentiment.
Can I ask one question before we move? And I don't know if David or Tom may. This is Bud Cullum again. I certainly have no problem at all saying we're never going to do any more rental apartments, but I know Alderman Pinchuk was very interested in some for sale townhomes, and I just wanted to make sure the language was such that I know earlier today we looked at the amount of acreage that's in the area where the detention ponds are, and if we just use that area somewhere in the 8 to 9 acres, and at 4 units per acre, we may be talking 30 to 30, somewhere in the 30 plus range. And I know at one point I'd mentioned the idea it could be 35 as much as 50, maybe more like in the 40 something range. And I just want to know, I wasn't sure I understood the wording, how Mr. Hale had that wording. I just wanted to make sure I did understand if that was limiting that. Again, I have said all along and will say again, I am perfectly fine with limiting no more of the rental apartment part of it. I just wanted to know exactly how that language would work with the townhome part of the development.
I'm sorry, Tom, that was my concern too, that's why I want clarity. I'm certainly tentatively certainly supportive of the idea. I just want to have understanding of what that means for impact. You may want a more medium density type housing, which 4 units per acre, if it's just, is it 4 units per acre for the rest of the buildable? Is it 4 units per acre just for the buildable area? And so we're all going to need clarity on that.
Yeah, and let me just say, put it to you this way. I was asked to prepare language that was raised by a particular alderman who has claimed responsibility for it, who wanted to put a limitation on he wanted to impose a limitation. This is not a negotiation. We're not negotiating over the details of this rezoning. What we're doing is we're deciding whether or not to impose this limitation. And the limitation that is in this language is 4 units per acre in some form that's not a multi-story large apartment buildings like is in the current proposed development. And if the motion if that density in the minds of the 4 aldermen that did not ask me to draft it, if that is not suitable and you think it should be, you think there should be some limitation, but you want the limitation to be not as much as 4 or greater than 4, 6 or whatever, then that's up to you to amend this motion, because that we cannot have a negotiation about the terms of the rezoning.
Let me jump in for a second. My conversations with staff was that there was only about 7 acres or so that was developable because of the 2 detention ponds. Now, I don't know how many acres are over there, but in my mind, I was looking at 7 acres, and 4 per acre would be 28, roughly 30 units. Now, if it's 8, that would be 32. If there's 8 acres, but I didn't want any more than that, and that was my thoughts.
And Alderman Pinchuk, I'm again certainly supportive of no more rental, and certainly supportive of limiting. My thought was I didn't want to get, if we came up with a plan that showed 38 or 40, I didn't want to be hemmed in by the 4 if 5 or 6 on that same acreage would allow us. And I didn't know whether, what was the dividing line? Was it 50 units? Was it 30 units? We're certainly, it's somewhere probably between 30 units where it's maxed out. And so that's my goal, is to hopefully accomplish the townhome sale model back there that you want. And I just wanted to make sure how that language that Tom was proposing, what was that going to do? Was that going to, I think we had a sketch, the last sketch that we did actually showed as much as 42 units, and we had another one that only showed 34 units, and it depends on how it actually ends up. So
May I speak to Alderman Pinchuk? May I suggest something? I know you're suggesting 4 units. I'm not sure where it came from, but R4, which is our single family attached residential zoning district, allows up to 6 units per acre. Now, they don't necessarily ever get to 6 units per acre, but it does allow for it. And that would be more consistent with at least tying it to a particular zoning district. I don't know if that matters. I don't know if that is helpful to you, Alderman Pinchuk. I don't know. I know that 4 units per acre in the recent discussions that we had about changing the land use plan is that's considered low density. And I'm just giving you that for a piece of information.
I appreciate that. And I didn't come up with the 4. I don't know where that came from myself, but I just wanted to put a limit on it. I didn't want to see 60 or 80 units back there. I was hoping to keep it around 30 or 40. I'm not locked into that. I'd like to get y'all's opinion.
This is Alderman.
If you want to amend your motion, you can.
I just had
talk
a question.
A little bit
this
about
is Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm definitely in favor of limiting the apartments, and I'm definitely in favor of limiting the further expansion back there. Is this something that we can table and do a little more research on between the next meeting and have the amendment in for the second reading, or at least we're all a little more up to speed on what we would like to see back there? Or does this need to be addressed and decided and voted on now?
All right. Well, the reason I wanted this condition put in is I didn't want any more apartments, period. So we need a condition put on this ordinance now. So if we want to just say no more apartments and leave it at that, that's fine. But the only way we're going to get some condos or townhomes back there is to allow him to put some limited number on the acreage for that purpose. So again, if I'd like to see condos, I'd like to see some units that people can take ownership of, and I'd like to see some condos or townhomes or whatever back there. So
may I ask a question then of Tom Hale? Understanding what Alderman Pinchuk is trying to do we need to set a density, or can we just say we don't want to see whatever the language was, where we don't want similar, what'd you say, such similar buildings?
That was we were, and just to be clear about this, Mark Shipley and I discussed this earlier this week. And in the course of talking about it, our discussion, he was expressing some degree of concern about the need for, as we talk about it frequently, transitions between the higher density areas in the less intensive use property. And our thought was that a 4 unit per acre would be a little bit more dramatic transition reduction in the area between the high density development and the creek and Concord Road. There's no magic to the 4. As a matter of fact, I'm not in favor of ever basing an amendment to the zoning on whether there's ownership or rental. It's not a good practice. It needs to be the form and the density that is covered, not how the ownership is taken. And I have counseled against that any number of times. And I would be not in favor of speaking in terms of any limitation on whether something is rented or owned. Now, if we want to talk about it, there won't be similar large multi-story residential buildings and take out the density. I think any specific density, I think that would be fine. We put the density in there so there would be no question about what was meant by the limitation. We wanted to add clarity instead of confusion at a later date. That was our thinking.
Okay.
And the four
To
units.
To be clear about it, for the record, and it needs to be said, I have had no conversation with Mr. Cullum or anybody representing Mr. Cullum about this issue. This is an issue that is only being raised because one of our aldermen and the staff raised it as a possibility of making this a longer term better fit for the town.
I think that Alderman Pinchuk and myself are on the same page. And I understand, Mr. Hill, what you're saying too about wording it on renting versus owning. So putting the language in as you suggested on the large building, I have no problem with that. I wonder, instead of saying 4 units or whatever, is just say no more than 40 units of townhome type on that balance of that property where the detention ponds are. I guess I'm asking Alderman Pinchuk if that is something, I'm just throwing out the number 40. It doesn't necessarily have to be 40, but I think Alderman Pinchuk and I are on the same page. We just want to make sure that I know going forward what my limitations are as to number of town.
Can I ask this question?
Your limitation is going to be whatever the board votes to allow. And I think we need to let the board decide what that is to be.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you this, Tom, because I know we're getting hung up. I have I was kind of doing some research on what's the difference between multifamily and single family attached. And my understanding is single family attached is called that because it is a separate unit from the floor to the roof, basically the roof. Could we use that language, restrict it to single family attached, and not necessarily tie because all of this has to be approved as a concept plan anyway. He has to come back and amend the concept plan at the planning commission level. And at that point, we could say, you know what, could we not say we don't want 40 units there? We want 32, or we want, and change it and handle it through the concept plan stage as far as density. I'm just throwing out suggestions.
I'm okay with sticking with the language that Tom suggested. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. So I'm not trying to negotiate. I just want to make sure I know exactly what it means,
Yeah.
and I think I do now. So I think I'm fine with that if that's
All right.
especially if that pleases Alderman Pinchot, because I think this was something that was very important to him, and I really do believe we're on.
Well, that's what I'm trying to narrow in on is what is the appropriate language that and I need clarity on what that is, because certainly this is going to come to the Planning Commission at some point, and we need to understand what it is we're dealing with. So I just kind of trying to nail it down, and I would like to nail that down.
Alderman,
Go ahead,
this is David.
Alderman Meyer.
So yeah, Alderman Meyer, I just quick question. So I thought that we restricted the amount of the highest density / apartments, and I appreciate your comments, Tom, completely. So I'm gonna try to refer to these apartments as the highest density available. I thought we restricted it already through the land use plan vote. So why are we having to restart? Is this amendment going to restrict the amount of density within that 25% of property that we've already restricted it to? Is it going to be more of a restriction, or is this restriction going to be outside of that 25% that we've already, I think, set the vision for?
Whatever the restriction is that is finally adopted would be put in a recordable document that would run with the land so that any future owner would be limited by the same limitation. That's the only way to make it not amendable at some future time. And my understanding is that Alderman Pinchot wanted to do that. Now, and let me say, subject to me doing a little review, having this discussion is making me wonder if we're not going to have to take this particular piece of the amendment back to the Planning Commission. There is a statute that requires the input when there's a substantial change in between what the Planning Commission approved and recommended in something that you as a body decide to change about what is proposed. I'm not telling you that we do have to do it. I need to do some research to decide whether or not the nature of this change we're talking about would be required by the statute to go back to the Planning Commission for its review and recommendation.
Tom, let me
Well, I
answer.
appreciate that,
This is
Tom.
Alderman Pinchot. My concern to begin with, and what started this all, was I just didn't want to see that land back there ever developed with apartments on it. And that was the condition I wanted to put. Later, Bud said that he had looked into townhomes and condos and saw that there was a need, a market, and he said that might be a good place for it. So what started out being just a condition to make sure that that land never had any more apartments built on it was where I started. So where we go from there, I need your help.
William,
I agree.
I think what we need to get here is what's in front of us right at this moment. I think the density that we've got called out on the whole PCD unit pretty well spells, what we're to do here. I think that's what we really need to look at, as opposed to any sort of amendment. I mean, if Mr. Collin comes back at a later date and wanting to build condos there, then I think it needs to be addressed then, because whatever he will come back with will be a lesser density than what it is there now. So, as far as that's kind of what we've got in front of us, I think is what we need to vote on. It's just my opinion.
Well, I was under the impression if we voted on it the way it is, that could possibly be developed with apartments on the back, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. So I just want to make sure if we approve this without this condition, I don't want to come back to bite us.
Mark or David?
Yeah, I'm here, Tom. Yeah.
I'm wondering if,
I mean, anything that happens on what is currently shown as those two future development tracks, that has to go through a review and approval process. Nothing's been approved there. I mean, what we were trying to look at with, and Tom and I looking at this language, if it came up, it was this concept of transitioning and what would be a density product that would provide for the form and density that would properly transition as you work your way out of, on the periphery of this project, and then further with what's around it, open space and low density residential. So the 4 units per acre, like I said, there's no magic to it. I mean, that's, in all honesty, most of the R4 developments don't even develop more than 4 units per acre. So it's just looking at, if you're going to place a condition on it, what would provide for a form and density that would logically transition as you work your way, from the higher density core of the project outward, consistent with the land use plan.
But in the fundamental question, if somebody comes back and proposes developing that property that is between the detention basins,
Mm-hmm.
it's the land that we're worried about, or I think Pinchot is worried about, will that require an amendment to the concept plan or a new concept plan to cover that area?
Well, it would require an amendment to the concept plan, because the concept plan, if it's approved at this point with this rezoning, doesn't show anything in those areas. So
Okay.
it would require an amendment to the concept plan. That's
so
the thing.
Whatever's done.
Yeah.
So whatever's done is going to have to be approved in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's right. And then a site plan approved through that.
You might be better off not putting any condition on it, because you might end up, things don't always happen the way we think they're going to happen. And you may end up in the future, there may be some reason why you don't want an absolute recorded restrictive covenant on this area, because you may decide that something else is more appropriate, something totally different. I don't know. I just think that if it's going to require additional approvals in the future of what's actually built there, isn't that the better time to make a judgment about what should be allowed there?
This is Alderman Meyer. I would agree with you, Tom, and I totally respect Alderman Pinchot's thoughts. But for me, we just changed the land use plan. So if this land we're talking about is purple on the land use plan, then we all agree that there should be apartments in this area, or I'm sorry, not apartments. We all agree that there can be high density apartments in that area, and I think that the zoning should reflect that, because we just set the vision through the land use plan. And to your point, Tom, like, there might be something come up someday that we don't know, that we might want a higher density than 4. I don't know, but I guess I'm still trying to reconcile the fact that we just updated the land use plan with our vision that there should be the highest density available on 25% of that property, colored purple or whatever it is. And if the land that Alderman Pinchot has in question is purple right now on the modified land use plan, then I believe he should have addressed that when we were making the land use plan change. But as far as I'm concerned, the land use plan is supposed to be the guide in which we make these decisions.
Yeah, but we're talking zoning. So zoning is a little bit different. I mean, this is a legal document. A land use plan is it's more of a visionary document. So we're talking about language. I
got you. I understand the
Okay.
difference between the two. I'm just saying that we came up with this vision that there would be allowed high density in the part of that plan. And I don't know why we would now, through zoning, try to restrict it. I'm not following that.
Well, I think what my feeling is, we'd like to see, we feel like there's sufficient amount of apartments. If we're going to have some mixed use, we'd like to see a different, with the remaining land, we'd like to see a different housing type. Really is the goal, is to see a different housing type, not something so intense. So, and that, that, to me, that's all would be fine and all good. But I don't disagree with Tom's position that these things, mixed use is changing all the time. They now have these new townhomes that are, they call them live work townhomes, where you have your business on the main floor and you live on the top, the other 2 floors. And that's certainly a possibility to think about in other parts of our town center. So things are evolving and changing, and we need to be cognizant of that we don't want to put ourselves in a corner and say, man, that kind of product would look really good there, but we kind of nailed ourselves to this one. So
I agree. But I respect Alderman Pinchuk's thoughts. Like I understand the intent, and I can certainly see validity in it, but I'm afraid this is, from my opinion, I can't support the amendment because I believe it's too restrictive at this time.
Well, go ahead.
Well, one of the things with the PCD is, if you look at when you're revising the plan's future modifications, I mean, it has kind of an extra layer of protection for what happens in the future that you don't really have in most of the other zoning districts. And one of the major modifications, and it lists here, is increase in the overall density of the development. If somebody's coming in on those parcels, and pretty much anything that increases the overall development density has got to go through, in this zoning district, the process of Planning Commission and Board of Mayor and Aldermen approval. So, I mean, it's a district that has some built-in extra protection that you really wouldn't see in most of the other zoning districts. So, I mean, it's up to obviously the board is whether you want to place a condition on anything, but whatever happens on those future development tracks is going to have to go through a little bit more thorough review than if it were just C1 property that was currently undeveloped and somebody wanted to propose a site plan there. Because it's all part of the same, it's all part of a development plan, and the plan at this point, they don't know what they really want to do with 2 of the areas, and that's fine, that's understandable. But when they do know what they want to do with them, if it's a major modification, which it almost would have to be, then it's going to have to go through the processes provided for PCD.
Mark, does that mean it has to go? I know it would go. Obviously, a new concept would have to be approved and through at the Planning Commission level. Does it go to the board?
If it's a major, it has to go through both. Yeah, if it's a major.
Okay. Well, there's your protection right there.
Yeah.
Alderman Pinchuk, do you get that? There's your protection. It would have to come back to the board anyway.
Well, that was my only concern. I just didn't want to see any more apartments go back there. I never brought up the 4 units per acre. I don't know.
I told you where it came from. Mark and I came up with it.
Yeah, but I mean, in my discussions, it wasn't there. My whole goal was to have no more apartments.
How about? I know. So how about if I just go back to my original motion, since we know this has to go back through when he comes back for any kind of change to the concept plan, it's going to have to go through the whole process again. So it'll come back to you anyway for approval. So why don't I revert to my original motion? then we don't have to worry about going back to the planning commission if we're changing this. Because we don't need to do that. If we know that this would come back to us anyway with a changed concept plan.
I don't want to hold Bud up any more than necessary.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was to keep it simple and just simply put a condition, no more apartments. But if we feel that
It's not that simple.
oh, okay.
Well, okay, Mayor, you've either voted up or down, or stay with the original motion.
So do you want to revert back to my original motion?
Vice Mayor Povlin, you could revert to your original motion. You would just need Alderman Burnett to second that, and then we'd have the original motion back on the floor again.
I'm moving to revert to the original motion. Alderman Burnett.
And I'm seconding.
Okay, now that we've went through this exercise, we do have a motion and a second on the floor, and I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Meyer. Alderman Meyer. Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Alderman Povlin.
Alderman Povlin, yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer. Guess we lost him. And Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Did we get a vote?
Alderman Meyer.
There he is. Alderman Meyer.
I'm here.
What is your vote?
Alderman Meyer. Yeah, I've got you on the phone. So I don't know if there's a delay, but Alderman Meyer, yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we complete vote then. So let the record show that ordinance 21-02 has been approved on first reading by unanimous vote. Okay, now we'll move on to ordinance 2103. It's an ordinance to amend Farragut Zone Ordinance Chapter 3, Section 22F, mixed town center associated with the town at Biddle Farms project 11230 and 11240 Kingston Pike and 133 Concord Road, partial 3.2, 3.03, 3.10, and a portion of 3.19, located on tax map 143, BE 4.63 acres, Bud Cullum applicant.
Okay, yeah, this is Mark again. Basically, when we were talking about the map amendments that y'all reviewed in the previous ordinances at the Planning Commission meeting back in November, we had mentioned, and this had been discussed kind of in different ways at various public meetings, that there would be some text amendments that would be needed in association with this project. And at the December 1st staff developer meeting, we reviewed the amendments that the applicant proposed and the staff had worked on. And, you know, we noted at that meeting that it's very common for larger kind of complex projects that have a lot of different things going on to need some kind of revisit of some text in some fashion. I mean, we did a substantial text amendment in association with the Top Golf project, as you may remember. Basically created a new zoning district for that project. So it's really not uncommon. And this particular project, basically, it's a little bit confusing. That in the planned commercial development zoning district, there's language in there that states that if the property is in the mixed-use town center future land use area, that basically the permitted uses and the associated requirements would fall back on the provisions that are provided for in the mixed-use town center section of C1 or general commercial. And the reason for that is that anything that gets developed as a commercial or planned commercial project in the purple area, the mixed-use town center area of the town, has a consistency to it. So that's the logic behind it. So actually, since the requirements refer back to that section, the modifications to the text are really in the C1 mixed-use town center section of the zoning ordinance and not the PCD. So with that being stated, what we looked at in that section of C1, basically there was 3 amendments that came about as in relation to this project. The first one was a clarification of where residential may be permitted in the mixed-use town center, and that it may be allowed on all stories of buildings if they are part of a horizontally configured mixed-use town center development plan, and if that is part of a planned commercial development zoning district and plan. And that gives you kind of a double layer of review and protection. And it really acknowledges the fact that we've talked about tonight that there's more than just vertical mixed use. I mean, there's horizontal mixed use, there's other types of mixed use. Really all you're doing, the difference is really that in vertical mixed use, the uses, you have a different types of uses that are in the same building. And horizontal mixed use is the uses are spread out horizontally, but they're related and they're part of a larger development plan so that they're integrated and connected with each other and to their surroundings. That's the key, is that either one of them, if either one doesn't really build that kind of, synergy and integration, then they're really not a mixed use development. It's not really whether uses are in the same building or they're not. It's the synergy, the interconnectedness, the pedestrian atmosphere, and just a different look and feel that a mixed use development is intended to provide. So that's really the key. So that was the first amendment that we looked at in this section. The second was just clarifying something that should be obvious, and that is that on-street parking in the mixed-use town center area would not be subject to the setbacks that would be typically associated with parking lots, because most parking lots are required to be 20 feet from the front property line. So obviously you couldn't meet that requirement with on-street parking, so just adding that language in there. And then the third thing was just amending the height allowance for accessory buildings from 15 feet to 25 feet. Frankly, this should have probably been done a long time ago, because the 15 feet, as we found in dealing with some projects, is pretty restrictive because there's a broad range of buildings that fall under accessory. So providing the 25 feet, it actually matches the height that's allowed in the PCD. So those were the amendments that were prepared for this particular project. There were a couple other things that, in looking at this language, that we basically cleaned up and updated. As you know, we adopted a new sign ordinance last year, and there were some provisions in the existing C1 mixed-use town center language dealing with wall signs that was out of date. It wasn't up to date with the new sign ordinance, so we proposing to modify that in this ordinance, and then also to acknowledge the fact that the architectural design standards were adopted in 2015, and that was after this original language was provided. So we have some cross-reference to the architectural design standards for building and site development. So that's basically the changes that are being proposed in Ordinance 21-03. When this was presented to the Planning Commission in December, they did unanimously recommend an approval, and the staff recommends approval of this ordinance on first reading.
I'm going to move to approve.
Alderman Pinchuk, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, I'll now ask any citizens' questions or comments to be read into the record, please.
Yes, sir. Our first one is from Mike Mitchell at 716 Brooksworth Boulevard. It says, for months, the people of Farragut have demanded that the mayor and aldermen conduct significant public outreach as required by the Farragut ordinances on changes to the comprehensive land use plan. For months, the people have been ignored. Enclosed are polls done by residents of Farragut that show the majority of respondents do not support the town center on the Biddle property. These polls prove the path you are forcing upon the people is not what the people want. The Biddle Farm poll shows 77% of respondents do not want the town center on the Biddle Farm. Town center poll shows 71% of respondents want the town center on Eddie Ford's farm. The CLUP density poll shows 74% of residents want a town referendum on the density of the comprehensive land use plan. The poll shows 86% of respondents think that Aventine apartments in the North Shore Town Center are suburban apartments and not a town center. Please show these polls. We don't want the Biddle Farm Town Center proposal. It is ugly. It is not a town center. It is not Farragut. We request once again that you hear us and represent us. I ask that you deny this request and conduct a public outreach to pave a collaborative new path towards our town center. Next one is Mike Wilson at 412 Eisenhower Street. My key concern on Ordinance 2103 is the change from a planned vertical development to horizontal development. The original mixed-use town center description, character, and renderings, as well as the applicable zoning ordinances, C1, TCD, and PCD, clearly show the desired development was residential over commercial. The recent changes to the CLUP and these proposed in Ordinance 2103 constitute a major update to the character of the MUTC. These changes are being done without conducting a significant public outreach called for on page 6 of the plan. This outreach is defined as something similar to the actions in the reference appendices. I've questioned the town on why this significant public outreach has not been done and advised the potential impacts. I've tried to handle this matter prudently, including detail in the conversation below in my letter to all of you on December 8th. I offered to provide an attached communication to the mayor and the town attorney with no response. With this ordinance before you, I believe this information should be in the public record. The attached communications from an October 1st Facebook message conversation. It indicates that this alderman sought to change the CLUP to stop a development on the Eddie Ford property. In response to my question regarding a Farragut Press article, the alderman states, quote, I'm trying to limit the town center to one mixed-use high-density residential project. There's rumors someone is sniffing at the Ford property. Later at 8:04 p.m., I questioned why the appropriate outreach was not being done. The alderman's response was, quote, how do you think they'd feel when Doug Horn drops an application for a second one in our town center and we haven't addressed our land use plan to prevent that from happening? But then reminded the alderman that outreach has been done several times in the past few years. Why not now? The response was, quote, because the plans are imminent, and I'll be damned if I'm going to sit by and watch someone who simply wants to maximize their land profit drop a group of apartments in the heart of our town and destroy this small town community. From these comments, it is clear that CLUP amendments were rushed through in order to stop a known high-density residential development in the MUTC area of the Ford property. At the same time, the town collaborated with the Biddle Farm developer on these PCD ordinance changes to drop a group of apartments in the heart of our town while significantly changing the MUTC area character without the appropriate outreach. Citizens ought to be concerned that the board has disenfranchised them by placing your desires over those that you represent. Personally, I am not opposed to high-density residential or changes in the MUTC area per se, only the process you're using to make these changes. As the ordinance 2103 be denied and that you direct the FMPC to conduct a significant public outreach regarding the future of the mixed-use town center. And that concludes our comments.
Okay. Again, I appreciate the comments that's been sent in. Just for clarity, we started this public input opportunity shortly after the first of the year, And we went along every month working on the project with the developer. And we noticed meetings that were staff developer, planning commission, as well as 2 steering committee meetings. And after almost a year of public meetings, we're finally ready to amend the ordinance. I don't know how much more public outreach we could have went with this. Here is a long time for a project to be worked on, but this was a complicated project, and it's actually took this long to go through all of the nuances that we've had to look at. So at this point, I guess I'll ask again, Mr. Cullum, if he has any response to any of the public comment that's on particular ordinance 2103.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, it echoes some of the other responses, some from 2 gentlemen both. And I'll point out again that some refer to the vertical mixed use, and then turn right around and refer to the density and the traffic. And I'll echo what the mayor said, and I think what Mark said. I think, Mark, it was either 17 or 19 public meetings, counting the staff developers that we've had over the course of almost a year. So that's really all I have to say. If any of the aldermen want to ask me a question specifically about it, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Okay, sir, that's good. We'll start with, why don't we just start with Vice Mayor Powell again?
Mark, I just want a point of clarity. We are not altering the ability in C1, anything zone C1, to have commercial on the main and residential above. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. You can still do that.
And you could
Absolutely.
still, and obviously TCD is written that way too. So
yeah, right. Yep.
So we're still open to vertical mixed use if somebody wants to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
okay.
You could
and
do
the only way
one.
You can have horizontal mixed use is if it's part of a plan and in PCD.
Yeah, and the logic behind that is what I was talking about earlier with a true mixed use development.
Yes.
The key is the integration, and then it's a kind of a cohesively planned product. So that's why it's an appropriate option in the PCD, because you have to go through that additional process and review that you wouldn't otherwise have to do in most of our zoning districts. So.
Okay, I just wanted to make that point of clarity. I think there's some confusion around that. Thank you.
Mark, Mayor again, were you involved with with this whenever it first come about? It was the comprehensive land use plan and some of the zoning that we see here?
Are you talking about the comprehensive land use plan back when it was updated?
Yes.
Yeah, I was involved in that.
Your interpretation of the comprehensive land use plan, is how it's written and what the intent of it was, as far as how it relates to zoning?
Yeah, I mean, it, like any document, it's a dynamic document. I mean, it's something that you have to constantly, update and revisit and make sure it's current and all those things. And that's what we've been doing with the steering committee that we developed over 3 years ago. We've really kind of taken our land use plan update, and we've really paid a lot of attention to it, looked at priority areas, had some workshops on different corridors, and looked at text that maybe needed to be clarified. So that's what we've been doing.
Okay, sir. Yeah, need some clarity. I mean, we've got opinions from residents that are a bit different than your interpretation of it. And I just want to make sure that what I'm hearing and what some of the people have interpreted it is it's not what it is, but what it was meant to be.
Yeah, the key is the character that you're creating, the sense of place that you're creating. If you're talking about the town center, and you don't really have to have a vertical mixed-use building to have that. That's not really what's important. That can certainly be a component of it, and it's probably a traditional component of it. But more likely, probably in the suburbs, just for a variety of reasons. The horizontal mixed use is pretty common, actually, and but you have to also make sure that it has the integration and the connectedness that it needs to have for it to really be a viable mixed use development and product. So that's kind of why the PCD extra review is important if you're going to do the horizontal mixed use, that you have to go through that. It has to be in that zoning district and go through that additional layer of, review and assessment, I guess, to make sure it has the components that it needs to have to be, a mixed use development.
Oh, okay, thank you. And we'll move on to Alderman Pinchuk now.
I have no further questions or comments.
Okay, sir. Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm fine, in regards to amending the C1 zoning. I'm fine with the residential being on the bottom floor. I would have concerns if we had to have commercial on the bottom of every floor. It could be very, very tough to find that many businesses to lease and sell, which would then lead to vacant spaces. As far as the on-street parking setbacks, I think this is pretty standard for downtown districts, and I'm in favor of it. And then the last one, the 15 to 25 foot accessory structures, or from 15 to 25 foot accessory structures. In general, I'm okay with that for a clubhouse, but I would be concerned about multiple accessory structures that need this height. I can't think of a lot of other structures that would need that. So can you elaborate possibly, Bud, on what outside of a clubhouse might need 25 feet as a structure? I know you've got maintenance garage type buildings that would need some type of structure. I don't think they need 25 feet, but could you elaborate there a little bit?
Yes, Alderman Burnett, I think my architect is on, and I may defer to him to answer that question, or my residential partner, Joe Fielden, either one of them. If you're on, if you could answer that question. I don't know of any other structures, but if there are, I'll let them clarify that.
Hi, this is Joe Fielden. Not sure if Bob's on, but can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome, Joe.
Gotcha.
I believe right now we've got a clubhouse plan, which would, be our leasing center and business center, and then a pool area, and then beyond that we've got a fitness building, and then we have a third accessory structure that I believe has a maintenance facility and in the mail kiosk that would take mail and packages. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not exactly sure what the planned height of those buildings are, but I could see them being up to 25 feet.
Is Bob Koch still on, Joe? Would he be able to answer that in any more detail?
Yeah, well, I see him on the call list, but I'm not.
I see him showing on, but he's muted right now, so I'm
not sure if he's still on.
it's showing that he is still on, but and you may have answered Alderman Burnett's question. I'm not sure. I'll turn it back to Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just had concerns. I mean, 25-foot tall accessory structures could get.
Well, the two additional structures to the clubhouse are both single-story buildings. I mean, they may have vaulted ceilings, but again, I'm not exactly sure what the height of those buildings are. But certainly we can get you that information quickly.
One thing we're trying to do with the height to increase it a little bit is it could create a situation where you have an uglier accessory building because you limit the pitch of the roof and it looks kind of out of context. So it gives them a little bit more option to have a different kind of pitches on an accessory building that might be more visually appealing.
Okay. That's good. No further comments.
Okay. You're saying that would be a way to kind of match up the look out of place. Is that what you're saying, Joe?
Yes, sir. That's correct. I think it may help us be a little more uniform on our two extra accessory buildings from the clubhouse.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Meyer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my only comment is I want to, I guess, start addressing some of the citizen comments. Again, I appreciate it as well. I just wanted everybody to know that the residents I speak to, and there's a lot of Farragut residents, kids who play volleyball and soccer that I seem to hang out with ad nauseum. And that demographic is so excited about this town center. And I think we don't hear from them. And so I think it's my responsibility to communicate that to all of you, that they are very much in favor of a walkable town center. They don't want to have to drive to places. They love the idea of a town center that draws folks in to set up patterns with shopping and with banking, so that those patterns are cemented into their way of life, so that when they want to get out of the apartment, they'll buy one of our expensive homes, again, so we can retire and downsize someday. There is an exorbitant amount of energy that I don't think we all hear about this very much. And I'm not going to encourage folks who are busy raising babies and working to send an email into us when they've already communicated to me how excited they are. So, Bud and team, I just want you to know there is an exorbitant amount of excitement about this development, and I could not be more supportive of it. I do like the less restrictions we can give you to develop that sense of space. I think I've made it really clear that sense of space that Mark is referring to, in my opinion, should be symbolic of the virtues of our town that start with the Campbell Station Inn. And so I think that making sure that you have enough height to have pitched roofs, I think is a good thing, because I do expect to have a uniform sense of space at the second reading. No further comment.
Okay, sir, I've already made my comments, and with a motion and a second on the floor, I'll ask a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Meyer. Alderman Pinchuk.
Alderman Pinchuk, yes.
Alderman Pavlin.
Alderman Pavlin, yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett, yes.
Alderman Meyer.
Alderman Meyer, yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show ordinance 21-03 has been approved on the first reading by unanimous vote. Okay, next will be, we've from Tom, but has he got anything else to report if he's on the line?
I have nothing else to report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next will be town administrator's report. David?
Mayor, I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay, sir. Well, in case, we'll go on to citizens forum.
We have no additional comment.
Oh, no additional. I won't even have to read that. Well, the time is approximately 10:44. And without objection, January 14th, 2021 Farragut Board Mayor and Alderman meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, folks. It's been wonderful.
Have a good night, everyone.